Can you, before the theme song, attach a disclaimer?
Hi, guys. I'll do it now. Hi, guys. This is producer Ben.
If Griffin and David are listening, I just want to apologize.
If Griffin, David, or Dana are listening, I'm sorry for my behavior and for being late. I am a saucy boy.
And I also apologize to Rachel because she had to produce the first.
And sorry, producer Rachel.
Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
I'm Nathaniel of the Yangees, Hawkeye, adopted son of Chingachgook of the Mohican people. Let the children of the dead Monroe and the Yangees officer go free. This belt, which is the record of the days of my father's podcast, speaks for my truth.
Okay. Good job.
Thank you. Sorry.
It's my favorite scene.
That's your favorite scene?
That whole scene. The whole language scene.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
the simultaneous
whole,
translation.
Right, where there's 4 languages and everyone knows 2.
Yes.
But people know different 2s, different pairs.
We're saying this is not a very talky movie in relation to most Michael Mann movies, which tend to be pretty dialogue heavy.
Sure. He likes his
but then this
dialogue.
is this weird scene where you just I love the sound mix where you're hearing the echo
of
the translators constantly after every line.
And you're like, wow, this guy he's fast. He's getting that to French right away. Vite.
We've come to that point. Friends, countrymen.
Sure.
The titular episode.
The titular episode
the namesake
of
this
our
miniseries. Because, of course, this is Blank Check with Griffin and David.
Right.
Podcast about filmographies.
Right. You're Griffin Newman. I'm David Sims.
Of course.
Right.
Everyone knows it. Of course.
Right.
Directors have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. Sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce. Baby. Now, this is a weird one because this is his biggest hit.
Yes. Adjusted for inflation, his biggest hit.
And even unadjusted, it's pretty close to being
Unadjusted, I
hit.
think only Collateral is more. Yeah.
This was like the closest thing he had to like a real deal, no asterisks.
People went to see it in the theaters and were like, I saw that film. I remember it.
It's kind of his most straightforward movie.
Sure.
But it comes after a really long gap in his filmography.
That's, I guess so. What is it, 4 or 5 years? 6 years,
I think
maybe.
It's 6 or 7.
Yeah, I guess Manhunter is 1986.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is 92 or 93?
I think this is 92.
Yeah. So it comes after a long gap.
Right.
And
I think he'd gone back to television.
That's what's
he'd
crazy.
He'd made like LA Takedown. He'd like
and he made a little show called Miami Vice.
Oh, really? Wait, it's that late in the 80s?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the big thing. Is like here's this guy who's in TV. And the guy we're talking, of course, is Michael Mann. The miniseries is called The Cast of the Mohicans.
Right.
AKA Michael Mansplaining. But he starts out in TV. He gets out of the TV ghetto, which always there was this Rio Grande line. You can't cross it. It's so tough to go from TV to movies. He does it. He makes 3 movies. They're well reviewed, or at least the first and the third are. All 3 underperform. And then he's like, cool, back to TV.
Right.
Then makes this like culture divining show. Does a bunch of other TV stuff. And then comes back with a historical epic.
Sure.
Starring the world's most intense actor.
Totally.
His only sort of like classic movie star action hero role.
Here's a question about that. How big was what was Daniel Day-Lewis to the public at that point? I mean, obviously he'd been in My Beautiful Laundrette, but was he like an arty British guy?
He'd won his Oscar.
This is his first movie after winning the Oscar.
My Left Foot. Okay.
This is his immediate My Left Foot follow-up.
I mean, immediate being 3 years later, but he didn't do a lot. Yeah, he took his time.
Did someone just...
Hi, Ben.
Oh, my God. What a twist. Standing outside our window.
I'm glad he's alive.
Let's clarify. Not in the studio, because who's manning the ones and zeros, of course, is producer Rachel.
Because Ben didn't show, but now he's shown.
Didn't show. And let's check the old clock.
Clockaroo. 48 minutes late?
49. It just hit 49, and he's flashed double peace signs. While wearing a jacket around his...
We have this very professional podcast for our podcast.
We have a very...
We are in shambles today.
Very professional podcast. And, of course, our guest who spoke before she was introduced, which is exactly what we want on this show, is the great Dana Stevens.
Hello.
Hi, Dana. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here as a witness to the cast of the Mohicans. Yes, he had said that he hated being in period stuff. And then,
obviously he'd done like Room with a View. He's so good in
Right.
Room with a View, playing like a total prig.
is
you know?
Age of Innocence after this?
Yeah, Age of Innocence
Okay.
is the next year.
And he's done.
But that's with Marty.
Right. Unbearable Lightness of Being is like him doing a more
That's
sort of
88.
modern thing.
But that's period, and that's, a Tony.
Right. It's a more recent period.
Whoa.
Oh. Lemonade
All good.
down?
All
Lemonade
good.
down?
Lemonade up. That's a Tony, novel adaptation, right? Like, I mean, even though it's very sexy.
But so are you saying this is in line with what you would have thought DDL would choose during this time?
this
It
is
or
not.
not?
is and
A
it isn't,
shift.
right? Like, it's a novel. It's a famous old novel. It's a period movie, but also it's like he's shirtless and he's
He was
wielding
playing more
an
posh
axe.
people. He was playing more intellectual people.
But this is definitely also, I mean, in My Left Foot, which was his last big role, there was all the talk of like, oh, he's so method, and he was like,
never got out of the
whole
chair,
time,
right.
And this too, it's like, oh, he went and he lived in the woods, and he became one with nature, right?
Right.
Like the myth of Daniel Day-Lewis is happening right now.
But it is in service of a more conventional movie star role, I mean, you can tell how intense he is in this movie, but it's also the kind of role that, like, Mel Gibson could have done a shallow version of, He could have just done a surface version of this guy walking in here. Really? Are you? I don't know if you're late.
And
I don't know if.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Dana. Hi, good to meet you.
Dana, nice to meet you. Pleasure. I love your shows.
Oh, thank you.
don't trip on my thing.
Rachel, do you want to
We got it.
Hey Ben, how are you?
I'm bad.
Are those your 3 vitamins in front of your computer?
They're vitamins to keep me alive.
Cool.
Anyway, sorry I was late. I had a night. We could get into it. Probably shouldn't.
Nope.
Nope.
Let's not do
let's
that.
talk about the
movie.
Last of the Mohicans.
Sure.
Can I just say, Dana, very excited to have you on the show.
Yeah.
Long
Very
overdue.
happy to be here.
A thing we like doing on this show is like completing groups, especially with like other movie podcasts. We want like the full crossover. So you write for Slate. You host or one of the hosts on the Pop Culture Gab Fest, but you have a new podcast too. And here's what I like about it: new podcast, but now retroactively we finish the group.
Which group?
Flashback.
Oh, that's right, because we've
your
had Cam
co-host.
on the show.
We've had
right.
Cam on the
Yes,
show.
that's
so
right.
Done.
So yes, Cam Collins, who's the critic for Vanity Fair,
That's
and
right.
I have just started a new podcast on Slate that's called Flashback, and it's an old movie podcast. So essentially, we're going to trade off, and each time one or the other of us
Picks.
will choose something from the golden
Sure.
early age of cinema, which we're defining as essentially 1895
Sure.
through 1999.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
I
up
was,
until-
I was like,
up
how
until the
golden
turn
are
of
we
the
talking?
century.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Because we want to have the freedom to jump around. So we've
Sure.
already talked about, we kicked off with talking about Gaslight, the Q-Core version from
Of course.
1944,
With
which
Angel
was great.
Lansbury.
Topical.
And then, we're trying, exactly.
Forever
We're-
topical.
We're trying to
Forever.
choose stuff that has some hold on the present day for whatever reason. And then
Right.
we talked about Wanda, which was fantastic, the Barbara Loden
Yes.
movie from 1970, I
Yes.
believe. And the next choice, what did we do after that? Oh, we talked about 3 Days of the Condor, which was super fun.
I love that movie.
And I feel like that's a director that you guys should do.
Pakula? Is it Pakula? Wait, who directed?
No,
Three Days
it's,
of the Condor?
Fuck. Wait.
Is
Condor.
it Pollock or?
Yes, it's Sidney
Yes.
It's
Pollack.
Pollock. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I
I
thought
would-
it was McGee.
I would love to do Pollock. He's
Ben's very amused with himself.
he's got a very robust filmography. Right? Like, he made a lot of movies.
He made a lot of movies.
But I mean, he made like, yeah, he worked in every genre. He was one of those like, let me make a period epic, or like, let me make a western. Let
That
me make
seems
a-
suitable
yeah.
to Blank Check.
No, that's what we often like Ang Lee, someone
Right.
we did, like he's like worked in any genre. Like,
Yeah.
we like people who hop around.
But yeah, so every 2 weeks, if you want to
Every 2
subscribe to
weeks.
Slate
2
Plus,
weeks.
yeah. And the first two episodes of that podcast are free. And after that, they're going to be for Slate Plus members only. But it's so cheap to join. You should join Slate
Is it?
Plus.
How much is Slate Plus?
It's $35 a year for
Oh,
the
that's
first year.
nothing.
Yeah. It's like a dime a day.
Can I just say sincerely, I kind of like that everyone's just adopting plus as the thing.
Plus.
I kind of like that people aren't coming up with crazy terminology, and it's just like, if you pay for the thing, it's plus.
The only thing that would annoy me though is if like you spent like 3 weeks brainstorming a name and you came out of it with like, I don't know, Blank Check Plus, like
Right. I mean, we spent like 9 months brainstorming our name. We probably should have just called it plus.
My pitch, you
Yeah.
just go, like it would be blank check, yup, exclamation point as bonus.
Ben's just coming in like so hot to make
So
up for the
hot,
fact
like
that he was
burning
late.
on fire.
Yeah.
I am. I'm sorry.
Yes. All
I'm
right.
hot.
Uh,
Look at me.
Yep. Super hot.
Thank you.
Dana, as a connoisseur of classic films, and at some point I'm going to hijack this podcast to be able to talk about Buster Keaton at some point. Because you're working on a Buster Keaton book right now.
Do a blank check on Buster Keaton. Talk about all his
He
movies.
was on our bracket.
Please. I've been pushing
bracket.
Dana. He's my guy. I've been pushing really hard.
Once a year, we have a March Madness bracket so that fans can pick like who we talk about next.
Yes.
And Keaton was on the bracket.
He was on the bracket.
Those Philistines.
They don't realize what they're missing.
They don't.
I forget who he lost to. It was probably like Michael Bay or something. I forget who knocked him out of there. But
if you do have any listeners who are Keaton fans, they should know that I am writing a book on him right now, and it's supposed to come out next year. So
that's so awesome.
Not a biography, but a sort of critical. I don't know how to describe it, like an appreciation.
And your Twitter handle is the High Sign, which is one of my favorite shorts of his. The bit the shooting gallery thing.
Yep.
It's like, have you seen it?
Have
you seen it,
David? I am no Keaton expert. I have seen like what everyone knows of Keaton, like the very, very famous Keaton movies.
That would kick off your podcast if you did it, because that was his first self-produced independent short.
Yes.
Not the first released, but the first made.
We would probably put all the shorts on Blank Check Plus. They'd be behind the paywall, and then we would do the main features. Everything to the
Our Hospitality.
No, because that gets into the MGM era, my friend.
No, Our Hospitality is still his independent production. In fact, it was his first feature.
You know what? Yes, I was confusing it.
No, it was not his first feature. It was his second feature.
What's the one I'm confusing?
I think you're confusing with Spite Marriage, perhaps.
That's the one.
I don't know.
The one MGM I'd want to throw in is Cameraman, because I love Cameraman.
Oh yeah, I just saw that on a big screen at the San Francisco Silent Film Festival with a live orchestra. It was absolutely dazzling.
I told Griff that you were doing this. I knew he'd be hyped up about it.
This is another thing I like about silent films.
Go ahead.
Is that you can
have
see
the
them
live orchestra
a bunch of times with different scores.
I have
and
a
it
question.
dramatically
Why no sound?
They didn't have the technology.
Oh, really?
No one talked back then, man.
Everyone was
real
mute. Quiet.
The audio producer doesn't know why there wasn't sound.
Yeah, come on, man.
Yeah. And that's the first mistake he's made all day.
Yeah.
No, but it's not like a cool thing because we're like so used to. I mean, Michael Mann's an exception to this because he's like constantly fiddling with his movies and re-releasing them. But so often we're used to like movies as being these like very fixed things.
Sure.
And if you're watching like a Buster Keaton movie, depending on where you rent it from or which distributor you're buying your disc from or where you see it, it could be a live orchestra, it could be a pre-recorded soundtrack, but it could be any number of soundtracks.
You know how there's like Roman statues, ancient statues and like busts and all, and they were all colored.
Right.
And we don't know what the colors were. Like we think of like, you think of like those
Greek statues and Roman statues were painted and
they
gilded.
Were painted.
And gilded with gold and stuff. Not only that, when Notre Dame burned recently, I learned that the sculptures on the front of the cathedral were originally painted and gilded.
What, like the gargoyles?
Yeah. Well, the gargoyles are more recent, but like the saints that are around the doors.
Like, and we can sort of, I think, guess at what they might have looked like. And what they might have looked like, I think, was like kind of what we would think of as really tacky, like lots of bright, crazy colors, gilding, like you said, all that stuff. But we look at it and we're like, ancient Rome was just white. It was just alabaster like that. But like, that's all just because of how we look at the things now.
What if David originally had like a ton of acne?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's later. I don't think David was David painted?
Probably not, because he was, that in that period they were imitating the so-called classical purity of the old sculptures.
That still blows my mind. I just want to imagine all those sculptures looked like Garbage Pail Kids cards. Like when they were painted, the details were just like sweat marks and like boogers and like
stubble.
Yeah, right, right. Like a little bandage, like an X.
It looked like when you doodled in your history books and would just add gross details.
Right, like an eye patch.
Oh, God, I love this episode
You
already.
could make them vaporwave, too, if you wanted to.
I'm
just saying.
Out of here. Too hot.
All right.
Leave the studio.
Oh.
Well, so we'll go. I'm sure we'll touch on Buster Keaton again. I just wanted to stump a little bit here because I want to sell our listeners on the idea of him being an interesting guy to cover.
And I would so come back and do any movie.
One of the first film auteurs, right?
Yeah.
Right?
He was like,
kind of inarguably.
I mean, especially because like as like actor, writer, director, producer, everything.
Editor. He edited his own movies too.
Yes. And he is fascinating because by all accounts, he was this guy who was like, it's a living. Like clock in, clock out.
Well, just born to it. He was a vaudeville guy. He grew up as a child star, basically, in vaudeville, in a very, very, very violent family act.
Right. Like, he didn't have any pretensions about it. It was just like, this is the job, this is the trade.
Oh, yeah. And he hated being called an artist or thought of as an artist.
And he was like exacting about doing things correctly, much like Michael Mann.
Much like Griffin Newman.
Much like Griffin Mann. Yeah, he rules. He's the number one guy.
Sure.
I hope your listeners enjoyed this hefty sidebar on Buster Keaton.
Oh, this is nothing compared to the sideboards. They get served up sometimes.
But here's a question for you. Dana, have you seen any of the older versions of Last of the Mohicans?
No, and I just saw,
talking about it.
calling this up on Amazon, I saw that there's a silent version. Yeah. And so since I'm deep in silent film right now, I want to watch it. There's a 1920, I believe, German version. This has been made, this novel by James Fenimore Cooper has been made into so many movie and TV versions.
I watched about half of the silent one last night.
Really? The Wallace Beery one?
When I couldn't sleep, yes.
Classic you?
Yep.
So it wasn't a German, it's an American movie.
That one's American.
Well, and Wallace Beery is Natty Bumppo? He's Hawkeye?
Wallace Beery is Magua.
Yes.
Weird.
He's the bad guy.
Of course, he's the villain.
Right. It's not very good.
Sure.
And it's also one of those.
What is it, like 70 minutes long or whatever, right? Like it's like a very abridged.
Yeah. It's an hour 10, I think. Yeah. But it's also it's just like very kind of stagey and overwrought.
Sure.
But
and brown face aplenty, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff can be a little tough to.
Yeah.
Just wave away with the old, well, it was the past. You know, it's still hard to watch.
It's also like one of the world's worst transfers I've ever seen. There's like
what
a lot.
What were you
of,
watching it on?
Amazon, a company that's done a lot of wrong things. But they, company with many, many mistakes. But they, Amazon can be a bit of a repository for just like public domain, like sort of like sloppy work. And so it like looks like a digitized VHS. And the intertitles are done in like Comic Sans. Like they're literally just like typed on a black screen. But it's not great. But this is, we were saying he wrote 5 of these books over the course of several decades. And this was kind of like his Tarzan. This was like his like money character.
Hawkeye.
Yeah, right. This was his like big franchise. And much like Tarzan, it falls into that category of like, what if there was like a white guy who kind of represented all the qualities of the indigenous people, but was, white for us?
Yeah, I was thinking about that with this character, and you've read the novel, right? You've read. I
read the first one. I read it in. No, I read The Last of the Mohicans in college.
Wow.
In an early American literature class where we were reading like Hawthorne, Melville. I can't name your 19th century American authors. And my professor
Tucker Max.
Yeah, right. Totally.
He's part of the Hudson sort of school too, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Like kind of functioning with also the artists, the painters.
I think so.
You're too hot,
coming
Ben.
in so hot.
Too hot.
I know stuff.
Cooperstown, as I was remarking to
Natty.
you guys, is
boy.
named after his dad, Cooperstown, New York. I almost knocked over the lemonade again. It's going over there now. But my professor was obsessed with him. And was really trying to sell us on the book when I remember in the lectures where he's like, don't you see, that thing where your professor knows that the whole class is kind of like,
I've been that teacher. I've been that teacher.
And he's like putting, he's like writing quotes out for us. He's like, come on, like this is so evocative or whatever. And I just remember it being a major slog to read. It's like truly, it's not terrible or anything, but it's very, very flowery and old fashioned.
They weren't dime store novels, but I feel like their legacy is kind of like those were like adventure books for people.
But they were enormously popular.
Incredibly popular.
Right.
And like at a time when American literature was still this like very early, exciting thing.
Yeah.
But Mark Twain liked to rag on them. Did you read like that too?
Yeah.
He like spent his whole life being like, I like books, except for Last of the Mohicans.
It's so funny because actually when I was thinking about the very thing Griffin just mentioned about the kind of racial disguise that Daniel Day-Lewis is in, right? The white guy raised by Mohicans.
Right.
I thought of Huckleberry Finn.
Right. 100%.
I mean, just this idea of sort of you're almost like Trojan horsing in a person of color, but you can't actually make them the protagonist.
Yes. That was not Mark Twain's complaint. He wrote a famous essay called Fenimore Cooper's Literary Offenses. Basically like a beef track, like where he was saying like, I want to find in one place in Deerslayer, in the restricted space of 2/3 of a page, Cooper has scored 114 offenses against literary art out of a possible 115. It breaks the record.
Let's say Mark Twain was not afraid to drag people on the timeline.
Yeah, he was right, exactly.
He would. Ding dong.
Oh.
Ding dong.
I'm getting the door.
Oh, okay, cool.
Creak.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Johnny Cash.
Oh, thank you for introducing yourself so quickly. So I know who you are.
I'm Johnny Cash.
I'm Johnny Cash.
You making fun of me?
I was just trying to do an impression, but I guess you could now.
Why
that you're
do it in
room.
my presence? That's very rude.
Exactly. It's a good point. Sorry.
Of course, I'm the ghost of Johnny Cash. Doesn't need
Rip.
explanation. Are you making fun?
No.
It feels like you're being very flippant with me.
I'm sorry.
You mocked me to my face, and then you said rip.
Well, rest it. I hope you're resting in peace.
Yeah, that wasn't what you said. What you said was rip.
Well, rip is an acronym.
You did it again.
For rest in peace.
It's the tone. I mean, you have to understand the tone in which you are saying this is dismissive.
Yeah, I can't really argue with that.
Okay.
I think if you met the ghost of someone who's dead and you said rip to them, it would be justified. If
Motherfucker, you're saying if, when that is the exact situation you are in. You are meeting country rock legend
All right.
Johnny Cash in the studio. Show some goddamn respect.
Sorry about that, Mr.
Sorry,
Cash.
Mr. Cash.
What are you doing here? How can we help you?
Right.
Well, I just want to say,
Uh-huh.
perhaps you remember my famous album, Live at Folsom Prison.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Singing to a
Bunch of jail boys.
room of prisoners.
One of the most depressing, hostile environments imaginable.
Sure.
Yeah.
Turns out the Audioboom studio is even worse with hosts like David Sims. Rather go back to Folsom Prison with a bunch of inmates. I'm sorry, I had to get one jab in. Ben, I could see Ben's pointing at the clock. I had to get one jab in.
It's fine, Johnny.
Look, here's what I wanted to say today, and I'm going to get straight to the point because you've wasted a lot of my time. I'm a ghost.
Good tactic by me, I think, to try and
now you're going to
things
filibuster?
Get to the point. Sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Treat all your house guests like this?
Well, the last house guest we had was a rhombus.
Sounds fun. I understand what your problem is. Look, here's the point. I walk the Brook line then.
All right, get out of here.
You're kicking me out of the studio?
I'm sorry. That's what this was.
Are you kidding me? Well, maybe it
would have worked. Lining? That's what this was all about.
Maybe it would have worked if you had come in here with such flagrant disrespect for a legend.
Sometimes that, I'm not going to say who, but someone just looks at the product being advertised on blank check and just sort of looks for a word within the word.
And
goes off of that.
A goddamn ghost. I get to manifest in a physical form 4 times a goddamn year. Them's the rules. I don't think you realize this. Every time a ghost comes into your studio, they are on borrowed time.
Did you see any movies this year? What else have you manifested?
Don't ask me about... Look, I got a point I have to make, okay? You spend a third of your life in sheets, and no one knows that better than me. Johnny Cash, a dead man.
Fair enough.
And I think back to all my regrets, not my drinking problems, not my philandering, not my crimes. All my regrets in life were having the wrong sheets.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I walked the line. I didn't walk the Brook line then. It's about time for a bed and upgrade.
Can you tell Johnny about the deal we have?
Let me talk to you about Brooklyn.
Great.
It was founded in early 2014 by husband and wife.
Oh, good. This guy got
Rich
the hint. He's
Fruwell.
going to finally show up and motivate his audience.
Their mission was to make 5-star hotel quality sheets more affordable and easy to order.
Mission accomplished.
It's the fastest growing bedding brand in the world with 35,000 5-star reviews. Because they work directly with manufacturers, there's no middlemen. It's great product, it's great service, and it's pretty affordable.
Oh.
For incredibly luxury sheets.
We love it here on Blank Check.
We all sleep on Brooklinens.
All of us sleep on Brooklinen sheets.
Right, Griffin?
Yeah, I sleep on Brooklinen. I was trying to stay quiet because I didn't want to be associated with you sort showing such disrespect to Johnny Cash.
He does walk the Brookline.
I hurt myself today on low-quality sheets.
All right. Well, now I'm back on
Come
board.
on, right?
Yeah, that was great.
See, these are some of the bits I would have gotten to if you hadn't wasted all this time at the beginning. But now I guess you just have to finish your call to action because that section's mandatory.
My Brooklyn sheets are the best, most comfortable sheets I've ever slept on.
Good for you.
And now it's time for your upgrade. Brooklinen.com is giving an exclusive
This guy can't even talk. This guy can't even talk.
Brooklinen.com is giving an exclusive offer for just my listeners. Get 10% off your first order and free shipping when you use promo code CHECK at brooklinen.com. They're so confident in their product that all their sheets, comforters, and towels come with a lifetime warranty. And the only way to get 10% off your first order and free shipping is to use promo code CHECK at brooklinen.com. It's brooklinen.com, promo code CHECK.
I fell into some Brooklyn in a tire. That's a full song you would have gotten to hear if you hadn't wasted my goddamn time. Now excuse me while I go back to the ghostly plane.
There's The Last Samurai. There's the film The Last Samurai, right? Years after this
That's
one.
the other weird thing is this is a film about the last person representing this group. It's a white person who comes in.
In this movie, that's not true.
I know it's not true, but it is still a little bit. What did he find?
His phone, I think.
Too hot.
Enough.
Basta.
All right. And so I was worried. In The Last Samurai, Tom Cruise is kind of the last samurai. And I remember the first time I saw this movie, I was worried, like, is like Daniel Day-Lewis the last of the Mohicans? But
the title.
They're very clear, like, no, he's not. No, he's...
Russell Means, who we will get to.
Yeah. Russell Means is always like, where's my white son? He always makes sure to qualify it.
Yeah.
If I remember right, Chingachgook is not his father in the book, right? It's like his adoptive brother.
Yeah, let me and Uncas is sort of a different character from what I remember. Chingachgook is his brother. For some reason, the relationship is qualified differently.
Because they got Russell Means, who's old enough to be Daniel Day-Lewis's father.
Yeah,
right?
and I feel like audiences really, or at least they thought audiences really were drawn to the sort of like wise elder type character, right? Like, you know, they like that sort of like gravitas of the chief. Or
it's a couple of years after Dances with Wolves, right. So it was occurring to me, although I would need more evidence to substantiate this, that there was something of a Native American craze going on in pop culture.
There was.
That's a good point. That's probably one reason that studios are like, yeah, go for it.
And,
like Last
this
of the
was
Mohicans.
Also kind of the first time period where they actually were casting Native Americans to play Native
100%,
American roles.
right.
Like post Dancing with the Wolves. I mean, people give Dances with Wolves credit for that, where they're like, this is the first time they didn't just like put Anthony Quinn in like
or maybe cast like a Mexican actor or like a Spanish actor.
Right. I mean, that's like famously the proud Native American with the single tear at the recycling ad was Italian. Like it was always just like.
Is that Chief Dan George? Am I wrong?
There
was a guy named Chief Dan George who was sort of your go-to
right.
Indian, and it turned out he was like a Jewish guy from Brooklyn.
Right, and Sasheen Littlefeather was the same thing, right? Wasn't she? Right.
Yeah.
Like all your representatives were always just like, here's someone who's quote unquote.
Sasheen was not.
Am I wrong about this? Am I slandering Sasheen Littlefeather?
Let me find out. I got her mom was of French, German, and Dutch descent. Her father. It's one of those, you know, this thing. Her father was Native American.
Okay.
He was an Apache. She barely knew him. But this is obviously with Native American heritage in general. It's like it can be very touchy to talk about like your blood relation to people versus your tribe membership and all that stuff. And
it's something that I feel like as two pale males and one pale female, we don't have a lot to weigh in on there.
Yeah, but and a late scum bum behind the points.
But I would say that there's this tension about that in this movie and in Dances with Wolves as well, where it's like, yes, finally they are casting Native Americans as Native Americans. Right. At the same time, there's a real
in supporting
noble
roles.
Savage. There's sort of a noble savage thing going on.
And they're often playing these archetypes. Right, totally.
But these,
and also, like, those actors are going to play your Native American guy for 30 years.
Right, like Wes Studi. Like
Graham Greene will still, you're like, oh, there he is. Right, Dances with Wolves. He's still,
Wes Studi was in Dances with Wolves, wasn't he?
Was.
Yes, he has a small role.
Wes Studi being the guy who played Magua.
Yes.
Right. But Dances with Wolves kind of launches both of them. And Wes Studi has this great career, but then it's like...
I think of Wes Studi as the only Native American actor who, like, led
really
a movie.
Yes.
Like Geronimo, that, like, he's, like, on the poster.
Right.
Even Hostiles, he was on the poster.
Above the title.
He's above the title.
Right.
He's one of the few where he's not playing the supporting role that's all wise or all tough or all...
I went down a 90s Western rabbit hole last night because I was trying to trace the timeline of this sort of boom.
Right, because with Dances with Wolves, it wasn't like, oh, you're making a Native American. It was like, you're making a Western. Those things are... No one makes Westerns.
When they were making it, people called it Kevin's Gate. And they were like, this is the greatest, most disastrous vanity project in a decade. It's going to bomb so hard. This guy's overreaching. Go back to the baseball field, Costner. And then it's like this massive success, and it wins all the Oscars.
Sure.
And then you have like Unforgiven wins again a couple years later.
That's right. That's this year, I believe.
It's very weird to have like two Westerns win Best Picture in such quick succession in a time period where the Westerns had seemed dead for a while. And then there is this 90s boom, and Dances with Wolves gets credit for being the first time that it was like, we're going to cast Native Americans, and we're going to be culturally respectful, and we're going to try to like do this right, even if the movie's about the white guy who's the best at everything.
Right.
Like that was like a shift. And there was, in that sort of boom, all the sort of lesser films that come out of it, Walter Hill's Geronimo, I was on that Wikipedia page, and they were saying that the studio was fighting him so hard to be like, you got a green light if you like cast Kiefer Sutherland and like paint him brown. And Walter Hill was like, we can't do that. What do you
right. That's
look
crazy.
at the fucking calendar. We can't do that. And it was like such a battle to get Wes Studi to play the title role in the film, and then the movie bombed. But it is that kind of crazy thing where it's like he's in the New World, and in New World, he isn't like any super significant part. You know, he's in a lot of
in
the
New
movie.
World, sure.
But he's not like, you know, Pocahontas' father.
Right.
He's not the chief, you know? He's one of these guys where like he does tons of work, but anytime there's any Native American film, they have to bring him in because it's sort of like, I think he does a lot of like consultant work. I think he like coaches a lot of the other actors too. I mean, he's a fascinating guy. He's got one of the great faces in the history of movies.
He's got an incredible face, especially in this.
And his voice is incredible.
Yeah. Dana, do you want to weigh in on Wes
I
Studi?
mean, I was just going to move to Russell Means for a second.
Okay. You want to talk Means.
And
Right,
say, I was
Means.
just fascinated to see that this was Russell Means' first movie.
Right.
I mean, I just sort of feel like throughout the 90s, Russell Means was just the face of Native America in movies. And he had never acted before, and he has a huge role. He was known as an Indian activist, as a, you know, really, he was part of the American Indian movement, right?
Yeah,
AIM.
100%.
And actually was quite controversial within that movement and led this splinter group where then AIM later was issuing press releases at some point saying, don't listen to anything Russell Means says, because Russell Means had some statement that he made. I don't know if it was at a press conference or what, but when he did this split off of the AIM movement, he wanted to eradicate all treaties ever made between any Native American tribe in the U.S. Like from here on, those are all void. And then the rest of the AIM people were saying, wait a second. We need somewhere to negotiate from.
Right.
Anyway, so he's known for being this kind of controversial and occasionally violent. He spent time in jail kind of figure.
And then
suddenly
they take over Alcatraz at one point? Like they would do all these sort of occupations.
There's a regular occupation of it. I think it still happens on Thanksgiving Day that tribes take over Alcatraz. But
they seized the Mayflower, a replica of the Mayflower. I'm just sort of looking at his.
To me, that's an incredible career arc, right? I mean, I don't know quite how old he is when he's
now. Well,
no,
he
died in 2012, I think. Yes, but when he starred in this movie, he had to be in his 40s. Right?
Yeah, like if he was born in 1939, he would have been like over 50.
Oh yeah, he's
like
my dad's
51.
age, right?
Yeah. But that's like the Michael Mann thing is like Dennis Farina was just an ex-cop who he like hired as a consultant, you know, and then had on set doing like a small role, and then he becomes like his muse. Like Michael Mann so loves the people who have just like lived in this fucking world, you know? And he like loves if he can find someone who's like, oh, you're like an actual ex-con.
Right.
Like you're a thief, you're a cop, you know?
If you listen to his director's commentaries, which are delightful, it's always like him being like, yeah, that guy's a cop. I met him doing this. And now, you know, like every like little actor, he's like, yeah, this guy did security for this gang. Right. So I hired him, you know, in this like great Chicago accent.
I just imagine that Michael Mann's like, I don't care if Russell Means has never acted before. I don't care if he's controversial. The guy like walks the walk. Like he spends all his time thinking about this stuff.
Yeah, and that really does come out, I have to say, in the performance. Like the parts are very underwritten, right?
Yes.
He really doesn't get much to do,
yeah.
but he brings a huge amount of I don't know what you'd call it, just hard-won wisdom to that.
Yeah. Verisimilitude, one of my favorite words. I don't know.
Which I mean, is like the key Michael Mann buzzword. And what's weird about this movie, because it is his most kind of conventional film, it's a pretty straightforward adventure film, you know, with his flourishes.
Yeah,
but the verisimilitude is the big Michael Mann thing. And at the time of its release, they were like, all the weapons are accurate.
Sure,
you know, we studied everything. We made sure. I mean, just like years of research, which combined with Daniel Day-Lewis, this just must have been the most fucking intense set in history.
Daniel Day-Lewis learned how to make a canoe. He carried a long rifle all the time. I mean, you always wonder about these method acting anecdotes, like, come on, he brought the long rifle to like the cater table, obviously Daniel Day-Lewis kind of invented a lot of that. So
yeah, but I think
can.
this is just a movie where those two guys were in a competition for who could find more hard-won details.
Are you looking at the trivia page?
I have to read you this sentence from a Newsweek review of the time, contemporary with the movie. Mann and Day-Lewis searched for Hawkeye's character by spending a month in the forests of North Carolina, learning the skills and tools needed to survive in the 18th century wilderness. Just imagine that month. Was it just the two of them? Was it just like the two of them camping out with muskets? It just sounds so intense.
Can you just imagine like Michael Mann and Daniel Day-Lewis like lying on rocks in the middle of the night?
My dad was a grocer. And Daniel Day-Lewis is like, my father was poet laureate of Britain, which he was.
Right.
I just see them like cleaning their long rifles as the craft table is being set up, somewhere in the distance.
This is something I want to read. This is from the trivia page on IMDb.
Yeah.
Many long nights were filmed doing the siege scenes, the big siege of the fort. Loudspeakers were installed all around the battlefield so that Mann could give directions to the whole crew.
Right.
And one night, after like a long night, Michael Mann started yelling, "What's that orange light? Turn it off! Turn it off!" And the second AD was like, "It's the sun." The sun's rising.
Wow.
And Michael Mann was so like distracted.
God damn the sun.
He was like, what is this thing?
I will say this is the movie where I totally you see why Michael Mann became so obsessed with digital. Because he's trying to make a movie that takes place so largely at night.
A lot of night stuff, especially in the first half.
A lot of night battles, and it's so difficult to light this thing.
Right.
And he comes up with some clever solutions, but you just imagine he's like, I will gladly sacrifice a quote-unquote prettiness in order to be able to make this just kind of look real.
Right.
But you don't think this movie looks pretty?
I think it looks
gorgeous.
very pretty. Yeah.
But
I think it looks very pretty.
The scenes at night, it is the classic, like,
right.
You kind of need total darkness to see everything right? Like,
right.
Their faces as they're talking to each other can be a little
What
obscured.
I find fascinating is this is such a pretty sort of painterly movie that you could see him becoming a guy who's all about that level of visual control. And instead, the second digital video arrives, he's like, cool, I'll throw that away. I'm happy to make the movie look like shit if I can get everything in focus and be able to film with low light levels,
Well, it's a little bit, it's Hawkeye-like to use DV, right? It's like he's moving stealthily through the forest using the tools that
it's very practical because he's one of those guys, David Lynch does the same thing where they're both like, I love digital cameras. It's so fucking ugly.
Right.
They both go I just love that it's fucking ugly and it looks bad and you can take it anywhere and it doesn't take time and you can shoot anything.
Right.
They're just like, get it done. Get it done. I'm more concerned about what's in the frame and I want to get that right. And then I want to have the flexibility to film that however I want and improvise on that level. What you're saying about the sun, he just must have been so frustrated waiting for the lighting setups. Of how do you make it look bright enough to be able to capture the image on film in a nighttime battle scene without cheating? Mm-hmm. How do you get enough fire in the background?
Not to mention the cave, right? The climax, the emotional climax of the movie takes place in a cave.
Right. Yeah. My one semester of film school, I had a class where they showed us this early 2000s Spanish Don Quixote movie.
Okay.
And there's a scene where Don Quixote and Sancho Panza are talking in the field, and he's just monologuing. One of his crazy Quixote monologues. And as they're talking for 10 minutes, the sun just goes down. And by the end of the monologue, I think it's an unbroken two shot. By the end of the monologue, it's just pitch black. You can barely see. In this time period, when the sun went out, everything was just dark.
Right, it's just completely dark.
You just couldn't see.
Well,
at night, it was just that's the end of being awake.
That's how people live, right? It was I guess I go to sleep now, right?
I think about this all the time when I think about very prolific writers from the past, pre-electricity, Shakespeare, Immanuel Kant, or something like that. Right. Yeah, just sitting there scratching it out by candlelight, the dedication.
Right. I feel when we depict that act in art, or movies or TV or whatever, it's this romantic, it's a close, it's a tight shot of them hunched over with the lamp and the candle and just scribbling. And the thing you don't think about is just everything around them is just pitch black. The light is only in such a small contained space.
Right. The experience wouldn't have been like, the liquid lamplight pouring over me. It would have been, shit, I can't see a goddamn thing.
Right.
And I need to finish Hamlet.
Right. And when you like have to go to the bathroom, you're like, let me get this fucking candle. And then you have to go through the hallway.
I really think about that.
Creaking floors, and your wife's like, please just come to bed. And you're like, I'm writing Romeo and Juliet.
Anne Hathaway, his wife.
His wife, Anne Hathaway.
Although I don't think they interacted a lot.
Yes.
Tom Hardy and Anne Hathaway have both made historical appearances in this podcast.
Yeah.
Of course, Natty Bumppo, as you say, is actually the name of the character.
Natty Bumppo was the name of the hero of all the leather stocking tales, but it's changed for the movie to the much more
Nathaniel Poe
90s friendly romantic name Nathaniel Poe, which I think is a loss. I mean, who doesn't love the name Natty Bumppo?
Natty Bumppo,
like, what's up? I'm Natty Bumppo with his long flowing locks.
Isn't that the same name of Nick Cage and Con Air?
He's something Poe. Is it?
And they have a similar hairstyle.
They do have a similar hairstyle.
That's what's weird about this movie. Is like
Cameron Poe is his name in Con Air.
I just feel like the whole way Daniel Day-Lewis is framed in this movie is like you can tell how much like intensity he's putting into it and how much research he put into it. But it's also like this is his one kind of beefcake performance.
Yeah, where he's like shirtless and running. And like you say, like Mel Gibson could have done this, or Kevin Costner.
Right, and the fact that the film is kind of painterly means that like he kind of always looks like Legends of the Folly, Right. He's like lit beautifully, and his hair is just
it's
like draping
the cover.
Over his
he
face.
And Madeline Stowe both could be on the cover of a Bodice Ripper paperback, right?
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes,
Madeline Stowe, is a very good fit.
Right, and his role is mostly action. Like it's not even just like it's largely a physical performance. His role is largely him running.
That's why I was thinking. I mean, to the extent that his character development, all the work he did, imagining with camping out with Michael Mann in North Carolina, etc. The place you see it is in his run. It's like his run is so expressive,
and his neck is like jutting out, like he's sort of hunched over. Like he just looks like he's a weapon.
Sure. He's always been a good actor physically in terms of like not being afraid of how he might look on screen as well. Like he's very good at like screening and like making funny faces and all that.
With his looks, he's got some wiggle room there.
Yeah, he's got a lot of wiggle room.
But that's this thing he said where he said that like early in his career he really resented his face.
Sure,
because he was like, I had this like nose and like this profile that was well suited for like these very kind of austere like dramas of manners, and that he like wanted to break out of that.
But he's got such a great face.
He's like
got an incredible face.
The best, but I think he viewed it as an impediment that he looked so much like a classical leading man. Or, what he likes is like playing fucking like nightmare people.
Yeah, he likes playing these very cartoonish creatures sometimes. Right. Like Bill the Butcher is a very cartoonish creature. Even Daniel Plainview, right? Like
right. Well, that's this other thing about him is like you've talked about how he's one of your favorite actors and how that's like kind of a lame answer.
What a hot take, right? Like that I like Daniel Day-Lewis.
But the thing that I think people don't talk about enough with him is that he's really fucking funny.
Dan is so funny.
Ben is close friends with...
Ben has this bit where he's friends with Daniel Day-Lewis.
He calls him Dan Lewis.
I just know him as Dan.
What do you think of Daniel Day-Lewis, Dana?
And he's very funny. Like he seems so serious,
especially when you're stitching shoes together. He's really cracking some good ones.
Don't talk leather to that boy. He go
on
and on.
Josh and Cobble all day long with Dan.
I can't believe Ben is redeeming himself.
But
I can't believe Ben is winning Dana over.
But here's the thing: you get him a couple beers in, and he is just cracking jokes.
Yeah,
it's really a delight. I wish more people knew that about Dan.
He's so proud of himself. Right. He leaned
that's enough out of
from behind the computer.
I stopped.
Biggest shitty
Dana, do you have a hot Daniel Day-Lewis take, or do you just
I mean, all I can say is that every time I see him now, I'm just so sad that if he's really done.
Me too.
And he seems like the kind of guy who might be really done. I mean,
yes.
He's famous for his sort of lack of vanity as an actor, right? As you were saying, he doesn't even like being like the handsome, godlike profile that he has. I can easily see him being somebody who just says, no, I'm private life. I'm cobbling with, my director wife, and it's all good.
And also you see Ben's influence in that, like once he announces his retirement, now he gets like totally tatted up and like shaved his head and wears black leather now. Have you seen what he looks like now?
Really? Are you serious?
Oh, I am so serious. I'm going to get this picture for you,
We're
Dana.
actually getting matching tattoos.
I mean, see, this is where the line between the bit and reality is getting blurred. but somehow Daniel Day-Lewis does now look like Ben is friends with him.
Ben's actually late because of him, but he's just being modest about it.
Yeah, he looks like someone who works at like a bike store now. You know what I mean? Like, like where he's like, yeah, let me grab that, and sort of like lifts it up. And
oh my God, can you imagine if he'd played a bike messenger?
He should.
Oh my God,
Premium Rush
what if
with
he had
Daniel
done Premium
Day-Lewis?
Rush?
Oh yes.
But that's the thing. Like, it feels like he's like pointedly trying to sort of like burn down the house now, and just be like, I'm like fully putting to rest the classical Daniel Day-Lewis sort of austere image.
Right.
God, I got.
While you're searching, can I tell my favorite story about
Please.
him? You guys know that while performing Hamlet on stage, he once broke down and couldn't go on, and the show had to end because he started kind of mourning his own father and freaking out on stage when he talked to the ghost.
He would see the ghost and like start sobbing. Right. I've read that story.
The story of it is incredible, and that was very early in his career. I mean, he may not have even done a movie yet. He was basically a stage actor.
This was, I think, he had started doing films, and it was his return to stage, and he in the middle of the performance said, "I'm sorry, I can't do this," and then never has done stage since.
He hasn't done stage since, which is crazy because I assume he's probably a fairly arresting presence on stage. I would just hazard to guess.
Wow, imagine being one of the people who got to
like
see him.
Saw him like do Hamlet or whatever.
Whoa, okay, so I'm looking at a picture of the new DDL.
He looks like
Shaved
a Brooklyn
head.
hipster now.
Yep.
Yeah. Totally.
Sleeve tattoos.
Yeah.
Oh, he looks good though. Oh man,
he looks so. I mean, he looks.
Let me see. Can I see?
So hot. I saw him at the Angelica.
Oh, you did?
I did, and it was one of those things where the first thing was just like, "Wow, that's a very handsome man," and then I realized that is Daniel Day-Lewis, but he was head to toe in black. He was
what
wearing
movie
like,
was he seeing?
Oh fuck! I was trying to figure it out at the time. I need to search my tweet history to see.
But he was in the lobby.
He was walking past the ticket taker. I was in the lobby enjoying a cafe. And he was all black, tight black jeans, black T-shirt, black leather jacket, black beanie. I think he was with Rebecca Miller, and full tatted sleeves. He looked.
What
like
was
a
he seeing?
Do
you think?
Okay, that's what I'm gonna figure.
Amazing Grace. How recently was this?
This was like a year ago.
Okay.
This was like right after Phantom Thread when it was like such a big thing.
He was probably seeing the Emoji Movie.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean,
wondering if he should have turned down that role.
He is an emoji, or he can do them all. He can do any. He can do
them all.
This scarcity effect we're talking about, like he won't do theater anymore. Now he's not doing movies anymore.
Right. That he only has one podcast that he hosts. Yeah, no, go on. Sorry, I'm sorry.
No,
it's a Game of Thrones talk back, which means it's about to end.
Right.
Okay, but
don't do the spinoffs.
Just saw Daniel Day-Lewis walking the Angelica dressed entirely in black denim. It was denim. It wasn't leather. This is April 7th, 2008. I'm going to go to the box office. Sorry to interrupt. I'm going to figure this out.
All right.
No, I was just going to say that making himself a scarce commodity like that just makes, even retroactively, right? Seeing a 1992 movie he was in makes his presence so precious. Like, there he is, 100%. One of the moments that he was recorded on film. And so that overlays this movie, which in many ways I think is dated and doesn't stand up super well.
I kind of agree with you.
But seeing him in it, absolutely magical. And the action scenes, everything that has to do with action, whether it's jumping off a waterfall, burning down a fort, all that stuff's incredible.
Yeah, that's
and
incredible.
It's also just kind of amazing as one of those, like, what if he had just like pursued this? What if he had become like an action epic guy? That's a thing he could have done. For a guy who's that intense and is that into preparation, he could have just funneled all that energy into like the time period and the physical demands of the role and just become a guy who did like these massive, He
could have been a studio guy. He generally this is his first ever studio movie.
Crazy.
And he generally didn't make a lot of studio movies. Just period.
Yeah.
I think something like The Age of Innocence, that's a studio movie, but like the Irish movies he would make with Jim Sheridan, like In the Name of the Father, The Boxer, right? Those are more European. And even like Gangs of New York, I mean, wasn't that was a full Miramax movie, right?
I think someone else had a piece of it.
Maybe. He's as close as you come to like a actor as auteur, even though he mostly worked with big auteur directors. Because his entire filmography is like, this long, right? Like it's like 20 movies.
I had just seen You Were Never Really Here.
Yeah, I can see him. I can see him checking that
that's
out.
what he was going into.
Right, there you go.
But also playing around that time would have been like A Fantastic Woman.
Sure.
Lean on Pete. He looked like he was dressed to see You Were Never Really Here.
He had his Joaquin pants on.
Yes.
Yeah. Hobo assassin.
Yeah.
All right, so Last of the Mohicans, like we said, his first studio movie, Michael Mann's first film in 6 years.
Yeah.
He is more adapting the 1936 film.
That's the weird thing is it's like this is him
Randolph
making
Scott
a
movie
because of how much he liked this other movie when he was a kid.
Right.
Like this movie in its weird way is kind of like Peter Jackson's King Kong, where it's like, here's this movie that had this big impression on me when I was a child, and now I'm going to make the movie that's in my mind, like how I viewed it when I was little.
And that movie, I think, is the one that makes the change to have Hawkeye be this more like straightforward romantic lead type. And that's what that movie's credited.
There's no romance in the book, no?
I don't know. No. Yeah. In the book also, which is
in the book,
another
has
thing.
He already joined S.H.I.E.L.D. at this point, or is it all set before?
In the book, Cora Monroe is like supposed to have some kind of African descent. Like there's she's the sort of the classic, like, you know, quote unquote dark lady,
right. Which Madeline Stowe is quite the opposite.
Right. They
question about Madeline Stowe's character and in general about the accent choices.
What's
in
going
this
on?
movie.
I don't know.
Okay, we can talk about the American accent choices in a second. But Madeline Stowe's character, Cora, is supposed to be British, right?
Yes, I think she's supposed to be. In the novel, she's from like the Caribbean, but like she's an aristocrat. She's a fancy British lady,
right?
Who grew up on some plantation or estate or God knows what, right? You know, like that's the idea.
But she and her sister are supposed to have been brought over from England by their dad. She does talk at some point about living in Boston, so maybe that's what messed up the accent.
Yeah,
but I gotta say, Madeline Stowe's voice is very in and out with the British sounds.
It is. I really like Madeline Stowe. She's a weird career.
Yeah.
I was a little bit underwhelmed by her watching this. I remember just always thinking she was just such a great beauty, incredible classic beauty, like off of a cameo.
Beautiful, and she's got a lot of presence.
I don't think vocally she's like particularly impressive.
No, I don't.
She also just doesn't have a ton to do, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, Jodie May has nothing to do except sort of just look,
she
very
barely
placid,
has a line. Yeah.
And have that incredible moment at the end of the movie. But like,
can I just point out that exact same thing happens in Birth of a Nation?
Really?
Well, I mean, a young white woman who is about to be abducted by a black man in that case, not a Native American, chooses to jump off a cliff instead.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
I feel like A Birth of a Nation might be problematic.
You don't think that movie holds up?
I don't know. I've been
little dated.
Because obviously I loved it as a kid, right? I have so much nostalgia for Birth of a Nation. It's just one of those movies. Oh, I mean, only real 90s kids understand.
All right. Pack it in.
D.W. Griffith is canceled.
Fully canceled.
Ding dong.
Oh,
dong,
I'll get the door.
Oh, thank you, David. You're being very generous. There's some weird portal and staticky.
Okay.
What's going on? Hello.
Hello.
Perhaps you have met visitors of my sort before. You've had visitors from the Walk-in-verse.
Oh, yeah. Can you refresh my memory?
Well,
some of our Walk-in-verse visitors?
I believe it was Christopher Walken, but then his arm turned into a snake.
How could I forget? Of course.
It's walking and talking for walk space, or should I say talk space.
Right.
In my universe, they call it walk space.
Right, because you live in just a topsy-turvy world.
Right. Well, of course, perhaps you've noticed that I'm a little different from the last Christopher Walken you met.
Right, and I'd like you to describe just how different you are.
Well, I, of course, as you can tell from my voice, are a spunky teenage girl.
What?
They call me Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken?
Christopher Walken.
Oh.
I got an asymmetrical haircut.
Yeah,
and I play drums in a band on Christopher Walken. And I hear the talk about talk space.
Hey, being in high school's tough.
Tell me about it.
Yeah,
social scene,
bullying,
pop quizzes,
homework,
pop quizzes.
Those damn pop quizzes.
I know. I'm Christopher Walken.
You know, when times is tough at school, you might need someone to talk to
constantly.
Someone who can support you through rough patches.
Guidance counselor isn't carrying their weight in my school.
That's where Talkspace comes in.
Thank God.
What was that?
What about me? I'm a very different.
Are you Christopher Walken noir?
I mean, you nailed it. Perhaps you noticed from my black and white patina. And I lost my partner on the scene of the crime, and I need to talk to somebody about it.
I feel like the reality is slipping even more from the sound of your voice.
I'm walking noir. I'm walking noir.
Talkspace.
I need to talk to somebody about this noir film I'm stuck in.
All right, so Talkspace Online Therapy makes your taking care of your mental health more affordable and convenient than ever before. You just provide your preferences for therapy. They'll match you with one of 4,000 therapists the very same day, and you can send them unlimited text, audio, picture, video messages from anywhere at any time.
Did someone say time? I'm from a different time.
Are you Christopher Walken 2099?
No, he might be showing up later.
Okay.
I'm Christopher Walkham. Right. Clearly a very different Christopher Walken. Even though you might think I sound like young John Travolta, I'm not. I sound like Christopher Walken. I'm a pig.
Okay, well, listen up. Talkspace is easy to use. You no longer have to wait for your next appointment to talk about what's on your mind. If you're having a tough time of day, you can always schedule a live video session with your therapist for extra support, and it's affordable. Costs about the same amount as a single face-to-face session, and you don't have to wait a week to share what's on your mind. Who's this now?
Now it's me, Christopher Walken, 2099.
Right. Well, it's nice to meet you.
I missed my entrance. The way it should have been off of my cue was time.
That's why I made the guess.
Right. I'm Hispanic. I'm very different.
Right. You seem very different.
Yeah.
Talkspace has more than 4,000 licensed therapists who are experienced in addressing the challenges we all face. To match with your perfect therapist for a fraction of the price of traditional therapy, go to Talkspace.com and make sure to use code CHECK to get your first week free and show your support for the show. That's check and Talkspace.com.
Now you need to help us. We have to fight a bad guy. His name's Christopher Walken Kingpin.
You brought it home.
Okay, thank you. We'll leave.
Yes, I agree with you that she is more striking in this movie to look at than she is giving a textured, dimensional.
But it's also true she's not given a ton to do.
She's not given a ton to do.
And as
she has to fall in love with Hawkeye like that
immediately.
Yeah,
I mean the falling in love, you only believe it really because of Daniel Day-Lewis
and the music.
Ultimately, right?
I would argue the music as well.
All right, but do you find the music to be smiting the viewer over the head in a 90s style? That
it's heavy-handed.
It's a little oppressive. Also,
it's a great theme. I mean, it's a wonderful, hummable theme.
It's a very
but he does not skimp on laying it on.
No. I was Googling, and I can't believe I couldn't find anyone else putting this together, but this theme is totally plaugrized.
It was a Scottish folk song, right?
Well, no, they took it from the opening of the Doughboys Live episodes.
Okay.
Some people are going to like that joke. Right, it's not for everybody. No. It's for some people.
Dana, the show's like this a lot. Where we have to stop being silly.
Yeah. Producer comes in 45 minutes late.
Yeah, right.
You're gonna talk
rebranding. On Time Griff 2019.
I agree
was
with you
15 minutes late.
Is the theme because the song wasn't the theme wasn't nominated for an Oscar. The score wasn't nominated for an Oscar, which seems bizarre.
And
maybe it was because it was
not original enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Because the main theme is taken from another song.
Okay.
Which is by some Gaelic songwriter, I believe.
Okay, so there you go. That's
contemporary 90s Gaelic songwriter.
Right, and so it was like ineligible.
And it also was two different composers.
Trevor Jones and who's the other one? Randy Edelman.
But I think Trevor Jones died.
Ooh, sure.
One of them died and the other one took over. Like it was sort of like noted at the time as being this weird mishmash score. Okay. Because it's like main theme is taken from...
It's a beautiful theme.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Pumps me up.
Cinematography is the only nomination this got?
Oscar-wise? Could that be true? No, it won an Oscar. It won for Best Sound, and that's it.
Really?
No cinematography.
Wow, that's
weird.
Very weird.
This is a very good-looking movie. You'd think, the sets and all that and the costuming.
This was kind of like, did this come out in the spring?
This film came out in September.
Okay.
Late September. So, I don't know, prime Oscar-y time. I don't know. I have Michael Mann movies are usually ignored at the Oscars. Like, that's all I got for you.
Yeah, this one is just so sort of like prestige-y. But I guess it also was like, I don't know, it's like an action movie or something.
Yeah, maybe.
But for it to come in between like Braveheart and Dances with Wolves and all these other sort of like similar...
These big, rip-snorting period epics that the Oscars would totally fall for.
What did win Best Picture that year?
Unforgiven.
This is the Unforgiven year.
It's the Unforgiven year. It's also like Malcolm X is one of the big movies in '92 at the Oscars. What else we got? Al Pacino wins for Scent of a Woman that year. Howard's End is that year. Emma Thompson win. Marissa Tomei. Good Oscars, actually. This was kind of a fun Oscars. A River Runs Through It won Best Cinematography, which is a movie that's like all cinematography.
Right.
Like I could barely tell you what happens in that movie, right? But like it looks good.
I can say what happens.
They
a
catch some
river
fish.
runs through.
Yeah, right.
Ben, give me a thumbs up.
Did you see this in theaters, Dana, or when do you remember first seeing this movie?
I must have. The only thing I remembered, I had a jolting sense memory of him jumping off the waterfall.
Sure. Right.
And, of course, the speech that he makes to Madeline Stowe before jumping off the waterfall, which
speech.
is probably the most quoted and excerpted in clips kind of line.
Totally.
Right.
That's funny.
Stay alive, whatever occurs. Is that what he says?
That sounds, stay alive is definitely part of it.
And that was all I remembered. But yeah, I think I must have because, I was, a teenager, young adult, and you go to the movies and see this that year for sure.
Right.
It's a very date movie kind of movie. I don't think I went on a date to it, but I imagine that a lot of people did.
You stay alive no matter what occurs. He's got that Yankee voice, that weird. Or he's got his own accent.
Let's go to those accent choices.
Let's talk about the accents.
I just wonder at what point in their conversations about how this bizarrely imagined person, right, like white son of traders brought up by Mohicans, who somehow is this like surpassingly incredible soldier warrior, but is allied with no one. Like, how is he going to talk? I mean, his language is this absolutely uninflected, just plain old. It's California,
weird.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like, what is that choice?
I don't know. It's a great question. And it strikes me as something that Michael Mann would care about.
Yeah.
It seems like it's weirdly the voice it's closest to is kind of Lincoln.
Yeah, that kind of like, I remember an old mill.
Right.
That sort of like, weird,
I will come and find you.
You stay alive here.
Yeah.
But I feel like his Lincoln was more stylized.
Yes, his Lincoln's definitely more stylized.
He found a way. It wasn't.
And also, he's talking that Tony Kushner dialogue that's like every word is kind of wonderful.
That movie's so languagey.
Clothed in immense power.
Clothed in immense power.
Now.
Whereas all the other Yankees and like the colonists, like not the Brits, but the guys who are like, hey, now wait a second. I feel like they are making that effort to have that weird accent of the time,
or at least a cadence, like a period
kind of piratey cadence.
The movie version of it at the very least.
Where it's like the American accent has not quite emerged yet, but it's being formed, right? The sort of classic New Englander kind of accent.
But his character, Daniel Day-Lewis, could actually just be saying like, "I want a slushie," He's completely modern in his diction and articulation, and that's obviously a choice.
I guess, right. And maybe it's just because he stands so separately from everyone else anyway, that he should just have a completely different cadence to everybody else.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I do think that's an interesting thing. I mean, I'm just thinking about what you said, Dana, about this being like a big high school date movie. I do feel like this used to be the thing of like, oh, you're like a teenager now, you're going on dates, you have to take them to like a serious movie.
Right. It's like Far and Away, Legends of the Fall, all those early 90s movies with marquee idols we know like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. But their hair's longer.
Yeah.
They've got a frickin', bolo tie or something's going on, right?
And a ruff, neck ruff of some sort.
And it's going to be long and like, it's going to be about some period of history and it's like going to make some, totally.
And they'd like play in malls and teenagers would be like, well, I want to look sophisticated.
Yeah, right. Let's go.
I gotta go. Like, this is like mainstream sophistication.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there was like enough action in it, enough like badass moments, enough romance.
Especially in this one,
Yeah.
It is kind of a good mix of the kind of chick movie love affair and the action scenes
and like swoony guys and pretty ladies and warriors, and it's great. I love it. Guy's heart gets cut out.
I do love like the thing that I was most taken by in this movie is that the quote unquote love scene is just Madeline Stowe breathing.
Sure.
Like, it's a pretty uninterrupted shot where you're seeing, like, his back and her over him, and it's just kind of like, implied foreplay or what have you, or just caressing or canoodling or spooning or what have you.
Sure.
And it's just a very long take of her, like, breathing. The exact thing that these kinds of movies, and especially Michael Mann movies, don't seem to really focus on, which are like women enjoying themselves.
But wait, one exception to that, and this is the love scenes reminded me of these, are the love scenes in Miami Vice, the movie. Right? I mean, there's the things that just the only reason that we know that Gong Li and Colin Farrell are into each other is because they sit around breathing and sweating and looking beautiful. They don't really say anything or develop any kind of relationship.
No,
that's not how Michael Mann works.
It's very carnal.
They jump in a little whatever watermobile.
Go fast,
Go to
fast
Cuba.
boat.
Right.
Yep. Go to Cuba.
But like that section of the movie, you're just like that long take. You're like, this could be from like Planet Earth or something. Like this is just like watching like animal mating habits. And the fact that it's like you don't even see his face really.
Sure.
It's just her. Like I don't know.
But again, I think the special effect of DDL really helps there because I feel like with a different actor, if Mel Gibson had done it or Brad Pitt or somebody, I might be saying, this relationship is really underwritten. I don't see how these two are getting together. But when you see that sort of like liquid masculinity of Daniel Day-Lewis moving through the forest with his muskets, like of course you're going to fall in love with him.
It's that Paul F. Tompkins joke about shooting There Will Be Blood, where it's like there's a tiger on the set. Like when he's on there, it's like the most intense experience.
Right.
He feels like a wild animal or whatever. Like a like
when
you look at a majestic
talk
animal.
About the set of
he has a whole bit. On one of his albums about
he opens talking about
because Magnolia
I gotta hear that.
It's very funny. Magnolia, he ended up not being in, but he did the table read, right?
Yes.
With everybody. Because he's like friends with Paul Thomas Anderson.
Because Fiona Apple at the time and Amy Mann, they were all performing at Largo.
Yeah, it was that whole early 2000s Largo
Patton
set.
Oswalt and Magnolia. Right, all those people were like in it, and then he brought him back for There Will Be Blood. He's largely out of focus. It's the opening. If they say I'm an oil man, you would agree.
Right.
Or if I say I was.
Daniel Day-Lewis like screams in his face as he's walking out, essentially. You would, if you didn't know it was Paul Tompkins, if you pause it, you can kind of make it
I was flipping out in the theater to my brother. I was like, that's PFD! And everyone's like, shut up. This is opening night of There Will Be Blood. But it's like that like opening monologue. The first time he like talks the whole movie because that first 20-30 minute section is silent.
Right, just hacking away in the mind.
When they jump to him and HW and call out.
One second.
No, I have a real question.
Fine. Please.
How long did he drag himself? Like his leg gets hurt and he drags to go get the trade in the gold.
Well, that's like the beautiful thing about the movie.
Right. Isn't it like people have said it's like he's like months go by between that, right?
Right. That's like Quentin Tarantino's whole take on the movie is like the masterstroke of the film is that you see him crawling with the broken leg and then it jumps ahead and somehow he's like survived.
Right.
And that from that point on, you're like, I have no idea what that guy had to do to survive, but I understand what it turned him into.
And a similarly crazy jump happens, of course, when you do the jump forward in time. And suddenly he's a tycoon living in a bowling alley house.
I love it. But wait, what were we talking about?
PFT just has like it's the most beautiful line where he goes like, so I worked like a couple days on There Will Be Blood, and I was nervous because, you would think that Daniel Day-Lewis is going to be really intense. But what I was surprised to find out when I showed up on set was that he is actually the most intense person who has ever existed. That guy is so fucking intense.
Very funny. And he calls him a live tiger. He's like, it's like there's an animal on this stage.
That's the big difference. And, Costner or Gibson or any of these guys could have done this role well, but it would have been a lot more about the movie star image and those guys knowing their angles and their persona. You think about the like Costner thing of like, I'm not really going to do the Robin Hood accent. I'm Kevin Costner.
Right.
I'm going to do it when I feel like it. Whereas Daniel Day-Lewis is like so committed to the thing that you buy the romance a little more because he's so in the movie as opposed to those guys who like become the movie. And he is also, even when he's playing monsters, a kind of weirdly sensitive actor. There's something weirdly sensitive and vulnerable about Daniel Day-Lewis, I think, even when he's playing horrible people.
Agree.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
he's a very vulnerable actor. He doesn't have a lot of vanity, like Dana was saying, and that plays out.
Because the movie asks you to buy that they fall in love because they are the stars of the movie. Like they essentially go like, well, of course, these are the two stars and they're very good looking, so they're in love, right? Like how quickly he goes, like, there's that scene where he's like, I'm staying here. And they're like, oh, you must be staying here for something. Wearing a polka dotted dress or whatever. They make their like joke.
Right.
And in any other movie, you'd expect them to be like, that's not why I'm staying here. It's nobility. It's commitment to the cause. Shut the fuck up. Right. And instead he's like, that's why I'm staying here.
Yeah. He's all like, I'm uxorious. Look at it.
Right. And so then I was like, okay, so now there's going to be like 40 minutes of him protecting her, not knowing how to tell her how he feels.
Right.
And so the next scene, he just walks into
over
a hut,
to her.
and they're like, we're doing this, right? And they just kind of look at each other and then just breathe for 2 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, that's the end of the first act. There's two acts to this movie, basically, right? Like the first part is like all politics and all like me opening my computer and being like, what was the French and Indian War again? And like, what's going on here? Like, who are all these people?
And
Michael Mann being like, you're either going to figure it out or you won't. I don't care.
The way that people talk about like people who don't like sci-fi films,
right?
And they're like, I just don't know what they're talking about. I can't engage with any of this stuff. I never have that problem with sci-fi films because I'm like, I know none of this is real and none of it matters.
Sure.
So there's nothing I'm supposed to be knowing. And then this is one of those Wikipedia movies where I'm like, what am I supposed to know at this point?
Right.
Like, how much is this like, he'll give me that information later, and how much of this is like, I'm supposed to have read the book before I sat down, you know?
But very early on, I would say, like around the time that you realize that Wes Studi's character is a double agent, right? Is you just kind of don't care anymore because you're just riding the kind of currents of suspense and feeling.
That's what I do. I just sort of, even I, who am like more of a history nerd than you, I think, Griffin. Like, I definitely give myself over to, I'm like, look, there's English and there's French. Yeah. And I guess there's American. There's a million different native tribes that are sort of being played off each other by the you know, colonial powers and whatever.
And it helps keep
We'll figure it out.
When you say it that way, you know, that helps keep this from being a really retro kind of cowboys and Indians movie in that there's all these conflicting forces, right?
Totally.
It's Indians versus Indians, and then like white people trying to manipulate those native
The white
groups.
people are bad in this movie. The English are bad. The French are bad. They're bad in kind of different ways. Like
we haven't even talked about our friend who ends up roasted and then shot on the, the scaffold.
Can I throw out a hot take?
That guy has a nasty exit. Considering that you think the movie's going to end with like, you know what, Cora will end up with this guy because he's going to turn out to be like, look, you can't really stay, you know, in the wild. You've got to go back to civilization. And instead, it's like, no, he gets burnt up.
What does he say to Daniel Day-Lewis when he's walking by? He has some incredible final.
Oh, you mean when he's being like dragged away?
Daniel Day-Lewis is like, I told you me, offer me.
Right.
And he's like something like point taken. He says something like duly noted as he's like walking to be burned alive.
That makes me respect that character more because that requires some chill.
He had some like an epic like dirt off the shoulder. He says something like that.
Yeah. It's a good exit for him. He's pretty boring until then, but then, I mean, that scene's great.
I mean, he's needed in the movie though, right? You've got to have the kind of the bad white guy being dragged along to kind of demonstrate that point of view throughout 100%. The movie.
It also, I mean, it's their introduction is so funny because you open with like this super intense action sequence where you don't know what's going on, and then it turns out it's them hunting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to like this very austere, like the two of them sitting under like a canopy, like drinking tea, or they're just like the middle of a field, like drinking tea, and he's like very casually proposing marriage to her, and she's like, I don't know you, brah.
Yeah, she's like, I didn't know, and he's like, just think about it, and she's like, okay,
I'm a nice guy,
right?
And she's like, fuck you, what are you talking about?
This is basically that actor Stephen Waddington who plays Hayward. The only thing he'd done before this is the Derek Jarman movie Edward II.
Oh, really?
Like this is basically his first like mainstream role.
But then you have like Danny Day going back to the house with Terry Kinney, and everyone's just sort of going like, dude, when are you gonna like get a girlfriend? Like, come on, like take it easy. And he's like, I have no interests.
Right.
I protect the factions. And this whole thing being established of just like the British and the French trying to win over the tribes, but also offering no protection.
Right.
And there's this sort of the survival instincts of just like, why should we go fight your wars when you're not promising that anyone's going to take care of our families, our homes, any of this?
Right. It was like a proxy war. You know, there was the 7 Years' War in Europe.
Right.
And America was like one sort of dimension of that war.
And all for the Hudson River. I mean, it's kind of...
it's a nice river.
Well, you didn't take a swim in it?
I swim in the Hudson River.
Yeah, when?
Upstate, not downstate.
Yeah, what time of year?
In the summer.
Okay. I was going to say you should have done July.
Dana, can you just get us back on track, please? Please.
Well, what else? What else about this movie needs to be talked about that we haven't talked about? Waterfalls, canoes?
The second half. All right, all right.
Once all the table...
What's the second act?
Because once the table is set, then the film does become this kind of dynamic of just like, he's trying to keep her alive, and Wes Studi is trying to catch him. Like there's a basic sort of chase mechanic.
If anyone talks to Wes Studi, he's like, I'm totally going to kill everyone and extinguish every last flame of their family.
And can you remind me of his backstory? The scene where we get to hear, what's the reason that Magua has this huge thing out for the dad of the two girls?
Hates the gray hair.
He hates Colonel Monroe, who he calls gray hair, specifically because that guy killed his family. I think like his whole family is gone. Yeah, the idea that there was some
it's revenge.
At one point, the Huron were attacked by the Mohawks, and he was punished by Colonel Monroe for like drinking whiskey and like whipped, and things like that. Like there's all this enmity. And by the time he gets back to his Huron tribe, his wife has like married someone else. That's the thing he sort of ends on, which we're supposed to be like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. So he's like, so I'm totally going to eat his heart, and kill all his children.
And it's this thing that like it sort of gets called out, where it's like he sort of got warped and converted partially by the Europeans.
Well, right in that big pivotal scene, that's Hawkeye's argument. Is
he's kind of stuck in between two zones now, and he's like lost his family. He's adopted certain characteristics of the colonials, but he's still so protective of his own identity that he's just kind of like, fuck everything, fuck everyone, kill them all, cut their hearts out.
In the book, as we were discussing, there is a pivotal fight scene where Hawkeye wears a bear outfit, like the skin of a bear, and wrestles with Magua.
Yeah, sounds cool.
Yeah.
It's too bad they decided to leave that out, because that would be a DDL in a bear suit is something I would like to see.
Sounds pretty great. I mean, the classic here. There they are. It's in the cave.
Oh, wow. so it's an illustration from the original book.
Yeah,
and it just looks like a bear. Like it's like a full. It's not like he's got a pelt cloaked over.
I believe
shoulders.
It's how Hawkeye like sneaks in. Like it's sort of his stealth suit. Yeah, it does just look like a bear.
Here's the thing that I've been thinking about. Paul Thomas Anderson, when people were asking him, like, do you believe he's really going to retire? Like, what do you think about this? He was like, look, I'll say this. The guy is very lazy. Like, he doesn't like working.
Right.
And I think it's because he knows how much he puts into the work. Right. So he's very scared to do it. Because once he commits to something, he's going to go.
It kind of sucks all the life.
Well, it's kind of like bipolar laziness, right? He's either doing nothing or he's all out.
Right. And he was like, he was like, how'd this come out? And he's like, look, we're like friends. Like we talk, we keep in touch.
Yeah.
I call him, we email, whatever. And I said, like, would you want to try to do something with me? And the whole pitch for Phantom Thread was like, we can write it together.
Right.
Like by Paul Thomas Anderson's admission, he co-wrote the movie and just didn't want credit for it.
I remember reading about their text exchange. Did you hear about this when they were naming the character? They were texting each other possible names for the character, and then Daniel Day-Lewis was the one who texted Reynolds Woodcock. And apparently Paul Thomas Anderson dissolved in laughter. He was like, that's it. That's it.
We can't do that. But it's
House of Woodcock.
The way Phantom Thread was like conceived is the same way like this podcast was conceived, which is just like the two of us texting bits to each other until we were like, I don't know, should we do this?
Yeah, right. This is fun.
Right. So like Paul Thomas Anderson kind
I
of
think
like
that this podcast is a similar artistic gift to the world. That
the craftsmanship is pretty much on the same level.
Exactly.
I mean, yes, on a pure technical level, the tech specs of this thing.
I mean, Belgian royals are always coming in to listen to this podcast.
No question. But that like PTA kind of tricked him into doing the movie by like getting him so invested in the incubation of the thing that it was like, oh, now you got to do it. But he was like, what do you think he's going to do when he gives up? And he's like, I don't know. I mean, he like loves watching reality TV. And he was like, yeah, he's just like on his couch all the time, and he'll call me and just be like, I just watched Cat from Hell. Have you seen this thing?
I'd love to hang out with him. I'd also be terrified to hang out with him and just try and understand what he's like as a person.
He's so fun.
I want to just know his media diet. Like, I want to know, like, is Daniel Day-Lewis playing Fortnite now? You know?
Maybe he is. Does he have kids? He has kids, right?
He's got kids, yeah. His son's a rapper, I think.
Oh, boy.
He's got a Switch. He's big on that.
Yeah, he's into the Nintendo Switch. He likes Lizzo right now.
Oh, big Lizzo stan.
Yeah, he's playing Mario Maker.
Yes. How did we get on this? You just wanted to talk about this.
I just wonder what he does with his days now.
I do, too. Well, maybe he makes canoes because he learned how to make a canoe in this movie.
Yeah.
He loves jeweling. He's a mango guy.
He probably does love jeweling.
He probably does love jeweling.
How old is he? 62.
He's 62. He looks so good.
He looks great.
I mean, he has so much of his life ahead to do interesting stuff. God bless him.
I just hope that one day, that he
I think he's going to come back.
Or maybe
at
he
some
texts Paul Thomas Anderson. He's like, what if we did a movie about, a guy who lived in the Arctic or something? I don't know. Like he has some insane idea.
I mean, he's done 6 movies this millennium. He has done 6 films since 2000 in total.
Right.
Which is pretty low for someone of his stature.
Yeah, 6.
Right. And they're long gaps. I mean, there are a couple times where he did them close together.
No,
a weird outlier is 9.
9's a weird movie.
Because it feels weird that he does 9 that quickly after There Will Be Blood. And I also would argue that's like it shows.
It's one of his worst performances.
Yeah. And it's like the accent's bad. And you're just like, does he just need that much time? Like,
I completely blocked out that movie.
I made
so
9.
Hated it. I hated that movie on
it's
many
not a good movie.
It's a bad movie.
And with Rob Marshall, like it would be like he's working with Scorsese again. He's working with Paul. Like it would always be like he's working with this extremely like important director.
And it was announced as Bardem right after Bardem had won the Oscar.
Sure, right.
And then Bardem dropped out, and they were like, "Well, now they're not going to make it. Who could replace Bardem?" And it was like in a crazy turn of events, Daniel Day-Lewis is dropping into the film in active pre-production. Like he signed on like months before the film was starting production, and he's a guy who's like, I need 3 years in the woods and then I'll get back to you.
He had to make 8.5 movies.
And he made a movie where he made a movie where he's like singing and dancing the whole time. And where he's like sort of doing an Italian accent.
That must have been why he took it, right? It must have just been like, this is a lark and it's so different from anything I've
never
ever
done. A musical,
I think so.
Right. Yeah.
But it's like so odd. And then he doesn't do anything until Lincoln. And he was like, I didn't want to do Lincoln. Spielberg had to like beat me down. And then
Does he ever say he did want to do any of his movies?
I think he wanted to do Gangs of New York. Although that was his other big gap, because that was after The Boxer. He was like, maybe I'm done.
The Boxer was the one where he was like, maybe I'm retired. Right.
Yeah,
right. That was a long gap.
And Boxer was after like a couple years of like...
He did The Crucible. After this movie, he does Age of Innocence, In the Name of the Father, The Crucible, The Boxer.
Wow.
And then that's his 90s. That's
and then he goes 90s. And he makes some shoes.
And he makes some shoes. Right. And then 2000s is Gangs of New York, then Jack and Rose.
Right.
Then...
There Will Be Blood.
There Will Be Blood, 9.
Lincoln,
and Phantom Thread.
It's quite a career.
Yeah.
So in the latter half of Last of Mohicans, I don't know, they're running around and stuff.
I mean,
it's
it
just
really
more
becomes
action
a chase
heavy.
movie, right?
It becomes a chase movie.
Right.
The politics go away after the scene.
It becomes
where
personal.
The Englishman treats with the Frenchman, which is a good scene. Where the Frenchman's like, "What can I say? I mean, sure, we can have peace, okay." Like that weird.
Is that the translation scene?
No, not the translation.
No.
Remember when the English colonel and the French colonel guy like have like a parlay over the siege?
Right.
Isn't that when Wes Studi kind of explains his backstory when they were like, "So what's your deal?"
That's when after that, where the Frenchman's like, "Look, I made peace. I can't kill these guys anymore." Wes Studi's like, "This is why I hate the gray hair, and this is what I'm going to do to him." And the Frenchman's kind of like, "Look, if a bunch of Huron guys happen to attack, not my problem.
Yeah.
But the French can't attack. We struck a treaty over here. Like we have a ceasefire or whatever."
Right. It's a weird like enemy of my enemy is my friend movie where everyone's working against their self-interest.
Because then you have the scene where all the English are leaving the fort. They're going to the other fort and they get like, ambushed on both sides. That's the lot of running. That's when Daniel Day-Lewis just sort of gets the girls out of there and
That's
runs
a
away.
great action scene.
It's
I just
incredible.
remember the column of English and then
Yes.
like that long shot where you see them being savage from both sides. It makes you understand kind of old warfare in a way that
100%.
movies don't often do.
And like also, the sort of order, the like regiment of the English, like cutting through like
and how useless
utter,
that was. It's like
total
Vietnam, right?
uselessness,
So useless in the
Cutting
guerrilla
through
warfare.
wild nature, right? And
my favorite thing is when they're all firing their rifles.
Yes.
And the plumes of smoke are
The
coming
smoke
out.
is everywhere.
And there's so
And
many shots that you stop
can't
being able
see
to
anything.
see.
That's what I love too. That feels like such a
fog
Michael
of
Mann
war,
thing,
yeah.
where he'd be like, you wouldn't be able to see anything almost immediately because the
Right.
gunpowder would be so like, and it would probably stink, like it's like all that stuff.
Right.
But that constant critique that's being made of action sequences, which 99% of the time is true, that you don't know what's going on
Yes.
and it's
Yes.
too noisy and it's too jumbled. It's true in every superhero movie. It's so not true when
It's
Michael
very
Mann
clean
directs
here.
action.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
right, totally.
Ding dong.
3? Let's get the door. I'm gonna get it.
Okay.
I'll get it. Actually, you know what? I'll get it.
Ben, I'll get it.
All right.
Oh my god, you guys are
Sorry.
funny.
Sorry.
Okay. You know what? Maybe before you go get the door, you want to pack.
Okay.
I'm saying you're gonna take a big trip over to get the door. You
It
guys
is all
are
the way
fighting
over
for
there.
it.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that when you go to the door, you have everything you need. That your phone doesn't die. That you have enough room to protect all your belongings.
That it can fit into a carry-on, without you having to worry about.
It's a long trip to the door. Our listeners don't know how far away the door is.
I mean, sometimes you have to take a flight to the door, and you want a carry-on. Maybe
how far away our door is. You know what I'm saying? Do you hear what I'm saying?
I do, and I also just won't go to any door without a suitcase made out of German polycarbonate.
Yeah, I mean, one must in this day and age. And whoever's standing on the other end of that door can wait because we have some key talking points to discuss, okay? This is the thing you need to understand, David. Away uses high-quality materials while offering a much lower price compared to other brands by cutting out the middleman, selling directly to you.
They got 9 colors and 4 sizes. The carry-on, the bigger carry-on, the medium, or the large.
For extended stays. And the thing I like about the carry-on, the bigger carry-on, and you can get them with or without a pocket on the front. I got one with a pocket so I can put my little devices in the front for easy access.
Who doesn't like a little pocket?
But the carry-on and the bigger carry-on, they're going to fit in overhead.
That's true.
I'm a guy who likes to just have one device, not one suitcase, not packed.
I'm the same.
Not check a bag
second.
I'm
always with you.
Just put it up there and on top.
Its dimensions are always going to be accepted by airlines. It has the battery in it for charging.
And some people go, oh, actually, you know what? You guys are advertising this company. They have a battery. They don't let those on planes. They don't let them on planes if the battery is non-removable. But Away, they're smart, and you go plunk.
It pops right out.
And here's a real selling point, because I bought one of these Away bags with my money.
Hell yeah.
You got sent some free Away bag, like some Little Lord Fauntleroy. Right. I had to go down. I had to slap monies down on the saw dollar. I had to slap money down on the barrel.
Griffin clearly buys things all the time.
Yeah, clearly he's talking about it like a human.
He knows how buying things works.
I said, here are my monies. Please give me one thing.
Sir, this is a barrel shop. Why are you?
I put it on the saw barrel, of course, as I said very cleanly.
This is my classic. I make saws, put them in a barrel, so you can buy a barrel full of saws.
I was bringing it on, right? They were like, sir, you have to eject that battery. I was like, well, no problem. Pocket it, right? So I was using the ejectable battery in my pocket, and I realized this portable battery is so much better than the garbage I've been lugging around in my backpack all the time to charge my phone.
Yeah.
So I've been keeping the Away.
So you actually use it every day. Even if you're not traveling.
I use it every day. And here's a fun fact. 2 weeks before I had to charge it again.
That is incredible.
Right?
I have one too, and yeah, it's a very, very...
I've been carrying that portable battery.
I think I told this story, but like...
every day, 2 weeks of good, rich, full charges before I had to charge it.
I went to another country. You might have heard of it. It's called England.
Never heard of it.
And
don't understand why you were there.
Well, it was on vacation.
Right. Okay, so then that makes sense. Right. You would go there for the first time, a place you've never been to.
Uh-huh. And I forgot to bring my plug converters, and I used the Away thing for a while.
Because it comes with all the plug converters.
And that's all I needed. Well, anyway, I also used to live in England. That was why I was there visiting.
I'm sorry. That's a lot for you to drop on us in the middle of an ad read.
All right, well, fine. How about I just call to action instead?
Please.
All right. For $20 off a suitcase, visit awaytravel.com/check and use promo code CHECK during checkout. That's $20 off. Awaytravel.com/check. Promo code CHECK during checkout.
You use CHECK during checkout so that you don't have to check your bag. You see what I did there?
I do, and you're right.
Okay, now, David, please, if you wouldn't mind, will you get the door? Because someone's been waiting out there.
Yeah, who is it? Let's see. Creek.
Who can plant a rosebud?
All right, no, Candyman, we can't have
I'm here to do the Away ad read.
I'm sorry, we already got it done. We're just so jazzed about Away.
Yeah, sorry, Dan.
Thanks for inviting me.
We'll pay you a kill fee.
You'll pay me a kill fee? Some of us like to be paid in exposure for your information, and I will see my way out to the door. Look, I won't ask you guys to get the door for me because it will take 20 minutes.
You can be on a Miyazaki episode. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah. What's your favorite one?
Has anyone claimed a Spirited Away yet?
I think so, yeah. I think that's claimed.
Damn it.
There are a lot of flowers in that one. I get it. At that point is when he takes them to the waterfall, and he gives the sort of don't die speech.
Before the speech, there's a great waterfall moment that happens where they go over the smaller waterfall,
Yes,
remember?
I love
And the
that.
English guy doesn't think he's going to be able to do it. And it's almost like this weird canoe empowerment moment where he does manage to do it as well.
Oh, not so
like,
bad.
this is just kind of like a ride,
And then they
right?
get into the other waterfall, and that's like where it's like, all right, okay, no more waterfalls.
But even there, you
Yes.
think there's going to be suspense
Yes.
about, are they going over the big waterfall? Instead, they just port their canoes in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is
It's
also
like in the Adirondacks, baby.
This is a very, very pre-TLC movie. I mean, they're chasing waterfalls for almost 2 hours straight. They didn't.
Jesus,
There was
Christ.
no warning to heat, and
This
Ben
is
minds
embarrassing.
me getting a bucket
Come on,
like Candace LeBron Bergen. I get
podcaster in the room, we
buckets.
doing that? Margot chops out the guy's heart at that ambush scene. Chops out the like,
and I love that
has
he
his
like
revenge.
he knocks the guy down, and then they cut to this wider shot where what he's doing is obscured by another dead Englishman's body.
Right.
And
right.
you just see him like really
Yes,
digging
you're right.
in.
You
Digging
don't
around.
see it.
You
You
don't
don't
see
see
it.
it.
Right.
And even when Hawkeye recounts it later, he says, I saw it from afar. There's
Right.
almost like this dignity given to that act.
Right.
Yes.
But then they cut in close to this low angle, and you're like, oh no, now we're seeing everything. Here's a heart in his hand. He's covered in blood.
I wonder if some of that was an economic decision. Like, we don't want to build an entire
Maybe,
wax
yeah.
torso or something.
Maybe a ratings decision. Is this an R or a PG-13? Like, because this movie is never quite like
no, that's a good question.
so
I feel
violent
like it might be
that
PG-13.
Let's find out. No, it was not. It was rated R. Yeah, G. Yeah, right. It's rated R.
This is also he does a lot of really weird like first person POV stuff in this movie in like coverage, where a lot of the times, especially when there's gunfighting, so often it's like the Great Train Robbery, like straight into the lens, the actor like looking down the barrel and pointing the gun. And then there's one of the scenes where like Daniel Day-Lewis and Madeleine Stowe are kind of falling for each other. And the way he breaks up the coverage is Daniel Day-Lewis is exclusively in profile, and Madeleine Stowe is like entirely head on,
Right.
staring straight into the camera. And it's like you're watching her fall in love with him, but it looks like you're seeing it. Like she's falling in love with you. And then it just cuts out to Daniel Day-Lewis just being like, yep.
Profiles were important back then, though. You know, like you say, like Madeleine Stowe's got a face for a cameo.
Yeah, she's
You know?
got such an old-fashioned face. She's perfect for that kind of period
She's
film.
like unbelievable eyes, too.
Great eyes.
Like incredible movie eyes.
But then Westerdy too has this like incredible profile.
Well,
Like,
yeah, he could be on a coin.
100%.
Daniel Day-Lewis is one of the greatest profiles ever.
Daniel Day-Lewis looks like
The bridge of his nose is like
right. He looks like the
insane.
Muppet who's an eagle. He
Yeah.
has that like sort of. He looks like a
Right.
falcon.
Right, and he's
Like
got
he's
those
got a beak.
those sort
Yeah.
of lines, the indents underneath the cheekbones, you
Right.
know, where like his cheeks get sunken in. He's like, he does, I mean, it makes sense. Like the Lincoln thing makes so much sense because they both just have like such strong faces.
Strong face.
Yeah.
And then so yes, Magua captures the ladies, takes them to his chief, his sachem. Who plays that guy actually? Because that guy's kind of good. Dennis Banks, I think, is his name. Yes, yeah, another longtime leader in AIM. So I mean, again, probably this was his first movie, basically.
I wonder if he and Russell Means had some backstage
maybe they had
tips
some
about what
beef.
AIM was supposed to be.
I mean, Means and Eric Schweig, who plays Uncas, like they're in the movie a lot. They don't have a ton to do exactly.
No.
But they're always sort of there. I feel like because there's the Uncas romance with Alice is mostly unspoken. Like it's mostly just a few glances, right? Like
Yeah, that's the B story.
yeah. It's very much the B story.
Right. Neither of them talk much.
No.
I mean, combined, they might have less than 10 lines of dialogue.
I mean, this could almost be a silent movie when you think about it.
It could totally
you know?
be a silent
You'd only need some titles in the first half to establish the political stuff. The second half is almost could be dialogue.
But that's what's so weird about like Michael Mann being this guy who's all about like verisimilitude, picking a book that is so sort of pulpy, and then not even adapting that book, but like remaking the pulpy movie he saw based on it as a kid.
Right.
And he's just sort of making a more intense version of like, I mean, I remember there's a Roger Ebert review that's really interesting where he was positive on the movie,
Right.
and Roger Ebert was like a big Michael Mann fan, but he was sort of saying like there's been so much talk in the press about like how much research they did and how historically accurate it is and how they built all the weapons and how
And they hired like a 1,000 Native American actors.
right.
and
Michael
all that,
Mann
right?
and Daniel Day-Lewis lived in a cave for 4 years and whatever, and he's like, this is like an old-fashioned adventure movie.
Right.
Like, it's very much like a popcorn, sort of like kid's story, you know?
And the
just
way
with,
the period
more brutality
stuff looks,
and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, right.
The period stuff looks accurately researched, but it also, in a very 90s way that you wouldn't see now, it looks like everybody just walked out of the costume shop.
100%. Right. Everyone's got beautiful makeup on, too, like, and all that.
Right, right. It's, like, very operatic in that sort of sense, and, like, shiny in Hollywood. It is weird that it's just, like, them committing themselves, like, wholly towards, like, some, like, adventure fiction.
Yeah. Apparently, I'm reading the Ebert review now that Mann said that the 36 movie was his first movie memory. So I guess it was like a crucial movie.
But this is like the King Kong thing for me. Like, you watch that movie and it's like Peter Jackson like pontificating for like 4 hours about King Kong.
Right.
And then people are like, did we watch the same? I don't think most of those scenes are in that. And this just feels like the same thing where like this must have been the formative thing for Michael Mann. And he has this movie playing in his head all the time. And he's like, I want to make the movie that's in my head.
Right.
When I
think it worked better for him than for Peter Jackson, I have to say.
Agreed.
I don't think this movie stands
really
up
like
great, but I like things about it, like Naomi Watts' performance.
It's so fucking
And of course,
good
Andy Serkis, incredible.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
But in general, I felt like that movie was a failure. Did you like
love
it, David?
We're going to
I'm
talk
with
about
you.
it at
I'm
some
with you.
point
I
on this podcast.
really adore Watts' performance in that, though. And that was in that era where you were like, could Watts be like our next, like, sort of Cate Blanchett, like, great leading lady?
Right.
And then after that, I feel like she kept getting sort of crappy roles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's the moment for her where you're like, this person can do anything.
I remember her doing press where she was
she's
like,
acting against an apple,
right?
Right? You know, like all that stuff.
I thought she was going to win the Oscar for that.
Oh, that's crazy.
That's the Reese Witherspoon Walk the Line year, which we agree that Reese Witherspoon's the business.
I love her in that movie.
I think she's fine in that movie.
I understand.
I would give Reese Witherspoon 2 Oscars for other films.
Sure.
You know, like
I understand.
But I think that performance is fine. And when I saw King Kong, I was like, well, this is like undeniable.
Oof, I do not like King Kong. I would happily
watch it again. The Naomi Watts of it is undeniable.
Yeah, sure.
You're going to watch it again someday because we're going to do it on the podcast.
I'm ready to do Peter Jackson. I'm ready for him. I fell out of love with him, and now I'm sort of like now that Hollywood has gone where it's gone.
Yeah,
I am nostalgic for his franchise-driven era. You know what I mean? Like, it was a better franchise-driven era.
Did you see that recent news nugget that Warner Brothers offered him Aquaman like 5 times?
Yeah, they kept calling him and been like, you've never heard of this guy, but he lives in the sea. And Peter Jackson's like, I told you I'm not doing Aquaman.
Is that Aquaman guy again? Right. But they just like kept on, like, it's the other thing where like apparently they keep on offering these movies to like Zemeckis.
Right.
That all of these guys are just constantly like, if we can get one of these dudes,
surely they'll knock it out of the park.
Right? Don't they want to go back to making?
I interviewed Zemeckis for Allied.
Yeah,
and he
seems to have no interest.
He was like, I hate that shit.
Yeah,
like because I was like, why did you make this movie?
Right.
And he was like, because we don't make these movies anymore, and I hate all this superhero garbage. Like he was very grumpy and very like straightforward about it.
And I think Jackson, like, I don't know, like. He doesn't seem to have...
Jackson, I think, is in that period. He's like, I'll do something if I want to do it.
Right.
Otherwise, forget it.
But he's so much more interested in, like, converting old footage.
Yeah.
You know?
Did you see his Weird War documentary? I know
No, I really want to see it because the colorizing thing sounds fascinating.
It's pretty fascinating.
It didn't play on big screens long enough, and I wanted to see it on
like
a
very
screen.
much a special event kind of presentation.
Occasionally it will show
It'll
up.
roll out, for
and it'll
like
be
a
like
night.
10 a.m. at some theater. Yeah.
It's cool. I saw it with like the 3D glasses and everything, and it's cool. The big scene that I've already said that I love so much is at the end. Is him treating with his chief. You got Hawkeye there. He kind of just walks in. Hawkeye's move is just he walks in and people keep like punching him and he's like,
Can I point out the thing about him walking in is that he finds them so quickly, right? Like after the huge romantic speech that everybody's like trembling in the cave.
My girlfriend's objection was this too. She's like, oh.
He says, however long it takes. And it seems
like 10 minutes.
In the movie time, I mean, even in the real time of the movie's world, it couldn't have taken more than a day
like
or
the
two.
next morning.
No, but he's been watching
I mean, he goes
them.
to the town. Yeah.
It is set up in the movie because he's been watching them from the crow's nest where he was supposed to take the shot at Thor.
What? This is a Hawkeye joke now?
This is a Hawkeye joke.
Yes. I think he just goes to the settlement. That's his move, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I guess he'll take him there.
Yes.
Then he just goes there. He gets one punch.
Right.
Someone clubs him. He gets like a cut in the chest.
I love that when he's like walking in and people are hitting him and he's like, okay, enough.
Yeah,
enough.
Right.
And then
why,
they like keep
why is
hitting
that not worse? Why is he not just murdered by mob violence at that moment?
I think they're surprised that he's not coming in on the defensive. I think they expect that a guy who has clearly like broken so many like rules at this point wouldn't like come in like fucking
he's sort of coming in
guns
like,
a-blazing.
Hey, I'm just here to talk. Right.
So they're like testing him, and they're like, "What if we hit him in the back of the head?"
And he doesn't respond.
Like, please don't. And then they just keep on attacking him until they finally sort of grab him. Yeah.
And you have this incredible scene that speaks to the sort of colonial mess of the Adirondack Mountains and like New York and America, right? Where some of the Native Americans, like the Hurons, speak French, and the Mohicans speak English, and the English speak French, and like the where like everyone speaks, and like
there's not one common language they can all.
But he's like saying to the English guys, like, you speak French, right? I don't speak Huron, so like you say this into French, so you use your second language to speak to them in their second language. Yeah. And the whole argument is over, like, are we being too French? Right?
Are we becoming like those French
Hawkeye
people?
is like
we
calling
being the Hurons?
The Huron, like Hawkeye's saying to like Magua is being real French right now. He's being real colonial. He's being, which is funny that a white guy is the one to be like, hey bro, like I'm salt of the earth. You're the one who's like, getting all like I'm gonna wipe out my enemies, you know. But that's like the argument that's being had.
You're right that the layers of languages are great in that scene. And Mann doesn't make too big a deal of it. He doesn't cut back and forth constantly between who's translating. You just hear this like web of sound.
Yes.
It's almost like the Sound Academy Award was earned just by that one scene.
Yeah. Won that Oscar. And the chief kind of tries to play Solomon. He's sort of like, all right, you can kill one daughter. Yeah. Right? And you
kill one, you marry the other. Is everyone cool with that?
And the guy can go back because I don't care about him.
Yeah.
Because he's sort of unrelated. And so then both men are like, no, I'll sacrifice myself for the lady. And what's his name?
Waddington? That's the actor.
Waddington's the actor. Hayward sort of as translator takes the bullet.
Look, I mean, it works because up until like this point, you're just sort of like, why is this guy still in the movie?
Yeah,
He's dead weight. He's a Baxter.
Right.
A
Baxter.
Yeah. And then like, you're like, pretty cool move.
Yeah. Rather than the other version of this in these stories, where the scorned guy turns villainous.
Evil.
Right.
Right.
Like,
in a strange way, you end up, even though that guy's been kind of a jerk and kind of dead weight the whole time narratively, you really feel for him when he's, tied to the stake and burned alive. And then there's that incredible mercy long shot from DDL.
It's really good.
Well, and you also get like
this movie so saves itself, I think, in the last 20 minutes. Yeah. Like I like the movie, I like watching it. It's fun. Like we do, but I agree with you guys that like it's sort of messy. It feels old fashioned, but then the ending is all these like kind of where you're like, oh, I forgot this happens, and that like the ending kind of just.
Well, almost with the ending being from when he jumps off the waterfall on, like that's sort of where I would clock it.
Totally.
Right?
And this also this is when you get into the classic Michael Mann territory, which is like, I feel like so many of his movies come down to like, how do you walk away from this?
Right.
Like ending with some scene and the weight of that scene and just going like, what do the characters do now?
Right.
How do they ever shake this off? You know? What was the other thing I was going to say? I don't remember.
I don't know, the big chase. I mean, then it's just the chase.
Yes.
It's just Uncas going after Jodie May, going after, I keep forgetting her name, Alice. Jesus. Yeah. Right? Like that's the end.
Right.
Is the West Studio.
Oh, what I was going to say is for Waddington, whatever his name is, it must be like so frustrating because at the beginning of the movie, it's like, here's a proper proposal. Look at that. Here's your tea. Nice table. So what do you think? And she's like, I don't know you well enough. And he's like, fucking... how much time, how much legwork do I have to put in there? And then, like, she's with Daniel Day-Lewis a day, and she's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the guy.
Right. Hawkeye, your name is?
Right.
Natty?
He's like, this guy's been around like 8 hours.
Call me Mrs. Bumppo.
Yeah.
Do you guys like the last fights? I don't know.
I do. I mean,
Uncas versus... I
like how...
Magua.
I like how messy it gets. But I also, he does the weird thing. I mean, you talk about the action being clean. It's also like the weird sparseness of it because it is still a time where there are like rules of conduct.
Sure.
So when you like cut out wide to like the side of the cliff and it's just like two guys kind of just like,
right. Kind of wrestling.
And everyone else is just kind of standing back watching.
Well, I have to point out that it also it's consciously or no, it harks back to the many, many action movies, superhero movies among them, that end on top of a building, right?
Yes.
Instead of duking it out on a skyscraper, they're duking it out on this cliff edge.
Right. And then Mission Impossible does this, where they literally just go let's just make it a cliff edge again in Fallout.
Right.
But it's that trope of you have to have your final fight at a great elevation, so that you can kill off your bad guy.
And it has to be man-to-man.
Non-gruesome way, but they're dead.
The classic.
You just push them off the... Right.
Which seems like that's disappearing a bit more, right? People used to fall from high places a lot more often in movies than
Classic
they do
Disney
now.
exit too, again, non-gory. And plus it's just a stunt that always looks good on a big screen, is someone falling through the air.
Black Panther, he just leaves him at the top of the waterfall. That's kind of an interesting twist of it.
Well, but he knocks Black Panther off the waterfall.
No, I'm saying the final moment. Spoilers for Black Panther.
You mean the final moment? Yeah, sure. Yes.
But when they're there at the waterfall,
sitting,
and he's like, "We can treat you," and Michael B. Jordan's like, "No, I'm cool. I don't want to live in a cage." And then he just leaves him there, dead at the waterfall.
Right.
It's kind of nice.
Good movie.
He doesn't push him off. It's a good movie.
So do you guys find the scene where Alice kills herself to be a little problematic, or because I kind of love that scene.
I kind of love it too.
In the world that the movie has set up, it makes complete sense.
I also
it's
think
kind of the only choice. It sucks.
Sure, it's the only choice she gets to make.
It's the only choice she can make with any autonomy at that moment in the film.
And in a weird way, she's romantically joining Uncas at the bottom of the cliff.
The other thing,
it's very capital R romantic as an exit. But I also just love how Wes Studi plays it, where he's looking at her with basically bafflement. Before she throws herself off her, he's like, come on.
Yeah.
And then he
That's such a great moment when he just motions over. He's like, okay, on with it. Yeah.
And when she does it, he plays a weird sort of respect on his face. He doesn't change his face that much.
Yeah.
But it is where he's like, oh, I there was honor in what she did, even though I never thought about her as anything but the seed of my hated, colonial master, right?
Well, Hawkeye knows better than anyone. Suicide is painless. It's MASH. I had to get MASH.
Well, he is named after Hawkeye from these books.
Oh, really?
Hawkeye Pierce, yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So there you go.
That is fascinating.
For some reason. I don't know why.
Weird.
Because his name is Benjamin Franklin in MASH.
Benjamin Franklin Pierce, yeah.
Benjamin Franklin Pierce.
Weird.
That's the weird.
And they call him Hawkeye.
Yeah. Yeah, he's given the nickname from the character in The Last of the Mohicans, the only book my old man ever read.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can I tell you some of the other names that Nathaniel Bumppo gets in these books?
Please.
They're amazing. Bumppo has gone by the aliases Straight Tongue, the Pigeon, the Lap Ear. After obtaining his first rifle, he gained the sobriquet Deer Slayer, which is the name of one of the books. The last book.
The last one, right?
And I think
he's subsequently known as Hawkeye and La Longue Carabine, the long gun. In The Last of the Mohicans, he's known as Pathfinder in the Pathfinder, and he is known throughout as Leatherstocking, which is the name of the whole series. And the Trapper. So those are all his epithets. A lot of epithets.
Names.
I think half of those names were at Coachella last year. Right?
Leatherstocking.
Yeah, Deer Slayer. Certainly. I want people to call me Straight Tongue.
But has he graduated to certain titles over the course of different miniseries?
Yes, such as The Pigeon.
The Pigeon's good.
Lap Ear.
Why is he the Pigeon?
The Fart Detective.
You got to read the whole series to see.
Because he likes shitting on people's heads.
And then the final fight is Hawkeye has to just stand over there because the final fight's is his adoptive dad, right? That is, they let the book plot take over, right? Mm-hmm. He's just going to watch.
He's going to watch.
At what point does the title get uttered? I am the last of the Mohicans.
Isn't it right at the end?
I think it's when he's... Yeah, I thought it was when they're
I think it's when Uncas is still alive. Yeah. Uncas is there when he says that.
There is this...
because I remember thinking that he couldn't be the last of the Mohicans at that moment because Uncas was still alive. But maybe I'm not remembering
Well, he gives this speech right at the end where he says...
I'm
to
less
the
Mohicans.
gods, take my son and tell them there is all but one. I am the last of the Mohicans. Right. His son is the last of the Mohicans.
If he had lived.
Right. The idea is that he could continue... Well, he can't, though, because there are no other Mohicans left for him to... there's no member of the Mohican tribe anymore, right? So it would be an marriage or whatever.
So what is the affect we're left to walk out of this movie with? I mean, it's got a big romantic Hollywood ending, and yet it's dark as hell. The world they're going to is my sister just killed herself. My son has just been horribly slaughtered.
100%. And the world is on fire, as one of Alice's only lines. Or no, is that? I forget. Maybe Madeline Stowe says that.
World's on fire. How about yours? That's why I like it. I never get bored. That's the final line.
But like, it's just like the ending of Heat, where it's like, you got him. And then like Al Pacino is like a shell of himself. You know what I mean? Like so many of these movies.
It's the how do you walk away from this thing?
Yes. How do you walk away from it?
Right. Well, like most, it's the opposite of a happy ending. It's like the characters succeed, and then you see
Collateral
how thoroughly the events have broken them.
Right, because Collateral,
it's
the
a
last
hollow
shot,
success.
Right,
Collateral, the last shot is Jamie Foxx holding Jada Pinkett Smith as they like stumble away. Like it's usually there are survivors. They're kind of the heroes.
I mean, the fundamental one for me, the one I think of as like the perfect Michael Mann ending, is the final shot of Miami Vice is just Jamie Foxx in the shower by himself, right? And it's just
no, it's not. No, the final shot of Miami Vice is Colin Farrell going into the hospital to see Jamie Foxx. The shower's earlier. I promise.
Weird.
Yeah.
That whole end section of Miami Vice where it's like, they've won. Also, Jamie Foxx will never get over this.
Yeah, right.
Like Naomi Harris isn't coming back, and he's just like broken. It's such a weird way to end. Like, here's your summer blockbuster based off a populist TV show. And I think that's like his takeaway is just like these events like aren't clean things in people's lives. If event is big enough to warrant a movie, it's not the kind of thing that you can then pack away neatly and just put on a shelf and move on.
Right. I mean, I guess in a way you could say that all those endings you're mentioning, all the Michael Mann endings, they bring back that line, stay alive no matter what occurs, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's just about pure survival.
That's
it's
the goal.
survival.
And they do survive.
Right. And that's
the two
like
of them.
the question he asks at the end of every movie is like, so what does their life look like now?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, that makes me think about sequels and how odd it was. I mean, in our time, this would unquestionably have a sequel,
Second to last of the Mohicans, yeah.
Right, exactly. The first of the something else, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Or a
whatever,
prequel, like there are still 10 more Mohicans.
Yes. No, definitely.
It was a hit movie, right? And it's based on a series of books, so the plots are right there.
They would have announced this as a potential franchise starter.
And frickin', give me an actor. Nicholas Hoult would have played, Captain whatever in a post-credit scene or whatever. Yeah, Jai Courtney would show up, whatever.
Yeah.
It would be like King Arthur or whatever.
Crossover with Mandrake the Magician.
I assume this book is so old that I could do one today, right? It must be public domain. Like,
we should add it to the slate, the blank check pictures.
Yeah, we're rebooting Last of the Mohicans. I'm sure that won't be problematic at all.
Yeah, no, we have a really sensitive actor in mind, culturally sensitive actor in mind to play Hawkeye. It's Ben Hosley.
Yeah.
I think it would be good.
Let's play the box office game. September 25th, 1992, Griffin.
I know my way around a ditch.
Yeah, I know you.
Right. Griffin, you hear that?
September
25th,
1992.
The Last of the Mohicans opened to $10 million at the box office.
Huge opening.
It's going to make 75.
Right.
Domestic.
Which adjusted is like 150.
160.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was a hit.
It was a big hit.
Number 2 is a movie I have a lot of fondness for. Oh, yeah, they don't make them like this anymore. Like an old guy. I couldn't even call it an action movie. An old guy crime thriller, but it's like a very light thriller.
It's a light thriller, and it's
not old guy. He's he's a older,
like 50s.
Yeah, right.
So he's like
big actor, huge actor, huge ensemble. Like so many famous people in this movie.
Sneakers, is it?
Sneakers.
Oh, Sneakers.
Phil Alden Robinson, Sneakers.
Past guest Ray Santori's favorite movie of all time.
Can I just say the magazine that I work for, Slate, is so editorially fond of sneakers that they once devoted an entire issue to sneakers. It was just covering it from every possible angle. It's a great movie.
Sneakers fucks really hard.
Great movie.
Is it about shoes or is it about
they sneak
tiptoeing?
Ben, it's about people who sneak.
Yes.
It's hacking. It's early hackers.
It's hacking.
The cast, Robert Redford, Sidney Poitier,
yep.
Dan Aykroyd.
That's right.
David Strathairn, a blind David Strathairn.
Yep.
Mary McDonnell.
Yep. Ben Kingsley.
Yeah.
You got them all.
Ray Santori has a custom-made spray-painted Sneakers denim jacket where he bought a denim jacket and had someone spray paint the poster from Sneakers on the back.
All
Who
right.
was it that directed Sneakers?
Phil Alden Robinson. It's his follow-up to Field of Dreams, which is another movie I like. And after that, he doesn't make a movie until he makes a Jack Ryan movie 10 years later. He makes The Sum of All Fears with Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
And then like 12 years after that, he made The Angriest Man in Brooklyn, which like never came out, like a Robin Williams movie. Yeah. And that's it. Like he's one of those guys where I couldn't even tell you how he works. Like, does he just have the money and he doesn't care? I have no idea. I don't know how his career is.
That's so weird. Yeah. I mean, anyway. I have to imagine Field of Dreams.
That would be a good weekend at the movies. See Last of the Mohicans, and then maybe like sneak into the theater, sneak into sneakers.
You got to sneak into sneakers.
All of the movies in the top 5 are good. All right, so number 3, it's a Disney comedy, but it's like a PG-13 comedy with a huge star, 2 huge stars.
Proper Disney or like Touchstone?
Good question. I actually think it's Touchstone.
Disney
because it's a PG-13.
Disney comedy too.
Sort of a saucy, aquatic comedy.
That's a saucy aquatic comedy. Well, it's not.
Yeah, it's Touchstone.
It's not Splash.
No.
Aquatic.
Yeah.
It's wet.
It's wet. Or is it a boat based?
It's a boat movie.
It's a boat. It's not Captain Ron.
It's Captain Ron.
It's Captain Ron.
Yeah.
I was going to say Speed 2.
Well, that's a little later. Speed 2, Cruise Control. That's coming up.
Captain Ron, part of Ben Hosley's Porch Classics series.
Yeah, you got Kurt Russell. You got Martin Short. Who else is in Captain Ron?
His gold label VHS line. Who's the? I fell down a hole watching like the first 30 minutes of Captain Ron.
It's on HBO.
It was on TV. I was watching it with
Mary-Kate Place.
My girlfriend, TC14.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Number 4. Sorry, is it's like a serious comedy. It's new this week.
Serious comedy.
Yes.
Pick one.
It's a comedy / drama.
A dramedy.
Yeah, from a big comedy star. I think he may have directed. Oh,
is it a Billy Crystal?
Yes.
Is it Mr. Saturday Night?
Mr. Saturday Night, you are on fire.
Thank you. That's a movie.
Wrote and directed.
How do you hone that skill? Do you just sit around and like peruse box office records?
Dana?
I mean, first of all, I do. It's one of my favorite pastimes.
He genuinely does.
I genuinely do. The second thing is my father and I would read the box office top 10 Monday morning every week because I've now told this story like 17 times. My father loves sports and he loves sports scores, and that was the ritual my father and my brother had together. And so that was the hey, Dad, let's make a lane where we can bond with each other. So like every box office from like 1996 on, I remember viscerally reading through it with him. And now it's like still one of the main things we talk about.
Nice.
It's just like good hold on that. We have a great relationship. I'm on fire tape. Mr. Saturday Night's a movie I'm like fascinated by.
Me too. But it's also one of those movies that I'm always like, this is good. Like it has to be. And then you turn it on, you're like, no, it's not actually good.
I remember seeing it.
It's really
flawed.
sappy, right?
It's very really sappy. It's way too long.
So long.
It's Billy Crystal. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, you're like, oh, is this like his darker movie? And you realize like he can't not be a sap.
Well, that's the problem.
Like that's just so part of him.
He's playing a guy whose
he's
problem
playing an asshole.
Is that he's a sap and an asshole.
Right.
Like it feels like it should be his introspective movie, but then it's this weird note of like it's a guy who like got stuck in the middle. Like that's the whole take on the movie is like on the way to the top, he got stuck in the middle.
Right.
But then the movie's about him sort of being reevaluated late in life. So there's this whole like corny angle to it. David Paymer like rules in it.
I was just Googling David Paymer's name because I was remembering how great the brother was in that movie.
Was the whole thing was they were like, this is Billy's big swing. This is his Dances with Wolves. Billy's going to get director, picture, screenplay, actor. And everyone was like, hold the crystal. Give me Paymer. Like Paymer's just like in the pocket.
Did he get nominated? David?
No.
Paymer
got nominated.
Paymer did.
Paymer was like the only nomination the movie got. I just remember watching it like fairly young on TV with my parents. And I was like, is this good? Like it was like so.
It seems like stately and
like
or whatever,
epic
right?
And it's self-important, and it's like clearly like expensive. And I was like, "Is this a good movie?" And they were like, "I don't know, like not really." But we just like watched the whole thing on TV at my grandparents' house, and I was like, "When's this from?" They were like 2 years ago. Like I don't know what this like the deal with this thing is. It's like a weird like it goes back and forth between him as a bitter old man and like
he's got old age makeup and all
what
that.
A weird fucking movie. And it's sort of based on an SNL skit.
Sure. Is
he
it?
Did this character once as like just an old timey comedian, like a Borscht Belt comedian. And then like post City Slickers or whatever, he was like, I'm cashing in my check I'm making this a 2.5 hour fucking melodrama. What a weird guy.
He's a weird guy.
Like, that's an example of, I would love to do that as a one-off episode. Like, I don't want
Has he directed any other movies?
There's the Paris one with Deborah Winger.
Forget Paris?
Yeah,
right.
And maybe he directed one other movie.
He directed that TV movie about the Yankees.
He was one of those guys where he went to NYU.
Likes the Yankees?
You know, I don't know if you know this. Bill Crystal used to go to the Yankees with his dad.
700 Sundays. Bill Crystal. He went to NYU for film school, and he was like, I'm going to be a director. That's what I want to be. And then sort of fell into comedy and acting. So when he got so big, he was like, well, now I finally get to do what I always wanted to do, direct. And everyone was like, no me gusta.
Try again.
Yeah.
Number 5, just to finish, is a movie we've covered on this very podcast, a classic of 1992. So rooted in its era, a comedy, a generational comedy.
Ben's looking at the monitor. He's nodding in agreement.
Maybe not a great movie.
I remember I made a good joke on this episode.
Oh, I know what movie it is.
What? What is it?
I'm joking. I'm saying off of Ben making a good joke, I was going to recall it.
Generational, like intergenerational?
No, it's about a generation.
Singles?
It's a...
nice. I was going to say Reality Bites, but that's a little bit later.
Of course, the exact same vibe.
Yeah.
So Dana,
probably a better movie. Well, are you a Singles person or a Reality Bites person?
I mean, honestly, I'm very Gen X in that I kind of sneered at them both at the time.
Because they were trying to be finally, they're telling their own story. Generation X, here for you on the big screen. Yeah.
And we're still doing it in that big, dumb Gen X package from the New York Times Magazine.
Yeah.
I think probably rewatching them now, I would probably prefer Reality Bites. Yes. I just love a Winona. But I don't think I was that big on either one.
No. I am not big on either one either, but I guess I'll take Reality Bites is a little more of a movie.
I'll say that's the
Singles
one.
Is kind of just it's kind of bullshit.
Reality
it's kind of fun,
Bites,
but it doesn't really amount to much.
Reality Bites is the one I think I prefer, but after rewatching Singles for this podcast, I never want to watch Reality Bites again.
Sure,
because I also thought I liked Singles a lot.
Yeah. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Right.
I went through my big Gen X period in 2003 and got really into both of those movies.
Right.
Ben, what's the great joke you made on the Singles episode?
He tries to kill himself on a suicide.
No,
that's a totally different movie. That's Elizabethtown.
That's a totally different movie.
Yeah.
You thought Singles had a suicycle in it?
Yeah, that's Elizabethtown. That's when Cameron Crowe's lost the plot.
That joke was worth reviving.
It was the suicycle.
Have you seen Elizabethtown, Dana?
No.
At the beginning of the film, Orlando Bloom is so despondent because of the failure of the shoe he designed. He designed a blank check sneaker.
Yeah, he designed the Edsel of sneakers, where
yes.
it was supposed to change the world.
But he forgot to put in the sole or something.
Right. No sole. If only the film had that nuance of writing.
Honestly, yes.
Yeah. But he makes the Ishtar of sneakers, and it blows up in his face, and every front page of every newspaper is like, can you believe the failure of this sneaker? And he goes home and he's got an exercise bike, and he takes a large kitchen knife, a huge chopping knife, and duct tapes it to the handle of the exercise bike so that he can pedal the bike and then it will stab him. The way the handles move back and forth.
Here is the bad shoe, which is from our Wikipedia page.
Spasmodica.
Yep, there it is.
But so he attempts to kill himself.
Is there ever any mockery of that suicide method in the movie?
As far as I know, it's not touched on
again. He's alone in an apartment.
It's played for serious, yeah.
Okay, I guess I got to do this. Orlando Bloom doing one of the worst American accents of all time. He sounds like Thomas the Tank Engine.
Sounds like a cartoon tugboat.
Right, he's like, okay, here we go. I guess I'm going to commit suicide.
What's the most efficient method?
Right. Duct tape, two-handle, pedals, tests it out, gets ready, sits in the chair, and then he gets the phone call from Judy Greer saying that his dad died. And then the movie is sometimes you got to go home to figure out where you...
God, that movie is unconscionable. It remains the worst film we've ever discussed on this podcast.
So David recently said he thinks it's the worst film we've discussed in almost going on 5 years of doing this show.
Yeah. For 4.5 years now. Yeah.
Because what the top three or rather the bottom three...
Right.
Last Airbender?
Sure. The Shyamalan, yeah.
Right. You said Elizabethtown?
Yeah.
And then, did you open the book?
No. Oh, you forget what the other one was now. It wasn't Spanglish. You offered Spanglish, but
I'll do anything?
Maybe. I don't remember.
I'll do anything. It's terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Book of Henry is the worst movie.
All right, so that's it. We're done. That's it.
Good episode, guys.
We're done. We did it. Right? That's it.
Do I have to?
This is how we end every episode, Dana. Is that we decide whether we're done.
Apology to this episode
to me, yes, and Griffin and Dana,
okay.
Right? Let's plug your podcasts again.
Yeah, let's flash back to earlier in the episode when we were talking about Flashback.
Right.
Yes, you can hear me on Flashback or on the Slate Culture Gabfest, which is a weekly culture podcast that is free.
Hey,
you also have a producer, Ben.
Yes, we do.
And Ben is very nice with friends.
Oh,
and I want to give him a shout out.
All right, I will give him a hi from the other Ben.
Yeah, but their show is like, it's like I've been on their show, and it's like they cut it together, and it's so professional, and it's nothing. You're very professional. You're very professional.
Wow. Clearly, I'm vaping.
It's more our style. It's we're just sort of chatting.
This is great. This is like the podcast equivalent of like having a drink on the beach. It's so fun.
There you put that pull quote on the poster.
Right,
pull quote. Got it.
All right. But yeah, so Flashback, Gabfest, your book, but that's not all.
And read my movie reviews on Slate if you so choose.
Hi, sign on Twitter. You're one of the best writers out there. I'm eagerly looking forward to the Buster Keaton book. And then hopefully we'll have you back on to talk Buster Keaton at some point when I win this battle.
Sure.
I'll vote in that bracket.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah. I don't know. We can do
Is there
Keaton
one?
sometime.
Do you have a favorite? Is there one you would want to claim?
I mean, when somebody's like one of your favorite artists, it kind of changes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Is there a movie I would claim? I might want to do a few shorts. I think what I would want to do is like lasso a few of my favorite shorts and talk about them because he was a master of the two-reeler and nobody watches those movies anymore because they're shorts. They don't fit into the feature program.
Yes. But like 1 week is like as funny as
I mean 1 week is a masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece. I just finished writing a chapter on it actually.
So the house? You know the house gag?
I know the house gag. Yes.
Falls down. He's at the window.
He's at the window.
Well, the big version of that gag, of course, is in Steamboat Bill Jr.
Right. He repeats.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good gag.
It's an old vaudeville gag. He does it with Arbuckle, too.
Yeah. Do you know why they call him Buster?
No.
Because he used to just fall down a lot as a baby.
So he was just busting
and
around.
They were like, oh, he's like good at pratfalls. So they just like throw him around.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
It was a different time.
And then when he was like 5 or something, he must have been like, hey, Mom, Dad, 2 quick questions. 1, why is my name Buster? 2, why do all of my bones hurt?
I used to babysit a kid called Buster who was named after Buster Keaton, which is an intense name to give a kid these days.
If my daughter had been a boy, she was going to maybe be Buster. We couldn't decide. We couldn't decide if it was too extreme or sounded too cute or something. But he's a true hero of mine, and it's a wonderful name.
I thought about naming a kid Buster.
The thing is, I babysat this kid. This kid was like 7 years old.
Yeah,
and he was a cute little kid. So Buster was a fantastic name.
Yeah,
I don't know how it's going to work when he's like 30. But he was an appropriate Buster.
You want to attach a really dignified middle name.
Yeah, sure, that they can maybe sub in if they need to, right? Like Buster Henry.
Buster Rhymes.
Buster Rhymes, yes.
And on that note, wrap us. Come on, take this train out of the
So this
station.
episode is dedicated to my future son, Buster Rhymes Newman. Dana, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks so much. It was a delight.
And thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe. Go to blankisatred.com for some real nerdy shit, and TeePublic for some real nerdy shirts, and Blank Check bonus features, maybe soon to be renamed Blank Check Plus on Patreon. Yeah. Thanks to Intragudo for our social media. Thanks to Joe Bowen and Pat Reynolds for artwork. Thanks to Lane Montgomery for our theme song. Next week, tune in for Heat.
Yeah.
Next week, the Heat is on with John Gabris.
That's right. That's right.
The Heat is on.
Yeah.
With one of the Action Boys himself, intern Gino Lombardo. And as always, my favorite scene in this movie is when Hawkeye retrieves the Soul Stone. I don't know.